Welcome to the Daily Wire's live coverage of the State of the Union. Tonight I'm joined by two of the best-looking men in the business. I don't want to say who. I don't want to start no fights. I'm your host, Jeremy Boring. We're glad to have you with us. Before we get started, I want to remind you that all of our Daily Wire Plus members can submit questions, and we will do our best to answer a lot of them in the back half of the show coming up after the president's remark. That's right. It's that time of year again, the worst night of the year, the night that the president stands up and goes on and on and on and on and on and on. It doesn't really matter to me if it's a Republican president or a Democrat president. People used to say, oh, Trump, it's going to be great. It was not great. The State of the Union is one of the worst things that happens in American public life. That's why we join together so that you can suffer right here with us. The only thing that makes tonight's State of the Union somewhat more bearable to me is that while we're here suffering it with whiskey and Mayflower cigars and whatever it is that Ben's allowed to eat according to his religion, Michael Knowles is actually there in person.
I know.
He's suffering in an actual seat.
He's gone and his cigars are here. It's perfect.
It's the best use of Michael.
He totally deserves this. Yeah. Good for him. He's finally getting what he deserves.
Here's a little clip that Michael sent us from the event itself.
Hey, gents. Sorry that I can't be with you all. That's actually not true at all. I'm very glad I can't be with you all because I'm here at the Capitol with Congressman Andy Ogles, who very kindly invited me here for the State of the Union. So you jerks can all watch it on camera, but we'll be here for the real thing. Andy, you just gave me a very important button on one of the biggest issues facing the country right now.
Well, every small town in America, every town in America is a border town because of Joe Biden and his failed policies. And so you have the result of Lake and Riley and so many others that have now come forward in the news of the assaults and the rapes and the murders and the burglaries at the hands of an illegal at the feet. You can lay this at the feet of Joe Biden.
To bring up Reagan's line, are you better now than you were 3 years ago? On virtually any measure, that is not the case. So we'll see how the president can possibly spin this tonight. One is hard-pressed to think of even one area that has improved or even remained status quo under his tenure. So we'll see what he can do, if he can even stay awake for the speech, right. And then we'll speak to you afterward.
That's Michael Knowles at the Capitol for the event, probably the greatest night of his life. Honestly, if any of us were going to have to go to this thing, who would love it more than Michael, who
Absolutely.
is an actual political creature?
Again, he totally deserves it. Anybody who enjoys it should be there.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
Not only is it the worst night just because the president talks like a dumbass for 1,000 years and lists all the things he's not going to do, but he's going to yell at you about, but also it's just a monarchic, anti-constitutional spectacle. You have the president of the United States descending among the various legislators who all ooh and ah over him and rush to grip and grin and take a picture with him and make kissy face. And then he's like, right over there in the corner, there's old Bob. Bob was a plumber during World War II. Stand up, Bob. And Bob stands up and claps. And
I have it on good authority that Bob will not be there tonight and that every single person the president points out will be there to advocate for slaughtering innocent babies.
Oh, that's even better. And then,
I actually think that's true tonight.
No, that's right. He's big into the abortion talk. And so it's all of that. And then half the crowd stands up half the time, half the crowd sits down half the time, and every so often you have Nancy Pelosi rip something up in the background. And that's pretty much the night. It's garbage.
The painful part for me is the press. The press has now gone so far. I thought I was inured to it. I thought I had gotten used to it. And then I saw Joe Scarborough saying that this was the best Biden ever.
So first of all, can I just say, Joe Scarborough now looks exactly like Waldo from Where's Waldo?
So we've answered at least one important question.
Now we know. Where is Waldo?
Where is Waldo?
It's on the MSNBC set.
But I just thought, what has to happen to you before you can speak those words? F you, he said, if you don't agree that this guy is on point, he's alpha, he's really, it was the SNL routine come to life. And I just can't. What Knowles said, I hate to admit it, but Knowles said something true, but he's right. There's no area of American life that's better since Biden took office that he has any control over. And yet, for the next 2 days, we're going to be listening to actual journalists who can dress themselves, wearing ties and dresses and looking like respectable people, lying about everything that just happened.
Well, Ben and I had a conversation today with a journalist who was asking us about why Gina Carano won't consent to being vaccinated if she purportedly wants to get back into the movie business, but she's unwilling to get vaccinated, which is now the industry standard in Hollywood. And this guy, it was a wonderful conversation we had with him. I'm sure he's on the other side, but it wasn't hostile in any way. But he brought this up as and he was actually He said, God, help me
I
understand.
literally don't understand.
I do not understand. I can't square it. She says that what she wants is to be back in the movies, but she won't do the thing. The only impediment is getting vaccinated. Why won't she just get vaccinated? Please, I genuinely don't understand. And I thought, yeah, I know you don't understand because you live in such a bubble. The left has built, they're against walls, ostensibly, but they have built walls between them and us such that they don't even understand how we think. I'm not saying that he would agree if he knew how we think, but you would imagine that he would at least understand the basic premise of what it is.
I have to tell you, I spent this week in New York, and I was talking to a lot of publishing people and a lot of stuff about my work and all this stuff. And they're the same way. They're like, well, you can compromise here, and you can cut this out, and you could do. And I keep saying to them, I can't, because it's not like I disagree with woke a little bit. I think woke is evil. I think you guys are the bad guys. So it's kind of like saying, you could just put a nice thing about Hitler here, a nice thing about Mao.
But this speaks to, I think, one of the things that's happened to Biden. So when Biden took office, he had about a 55, 60% approval rating, and he came into office as a supposed moderate. He was somebody who's going to unify the country and govern from the center left, right? He won the entire race on the basis of not being Bernie Sanders on the one hand and not being Donald Trump on the other.
That's right.
And so he enters office, and that's sort of the basis of his entire administration. And very quickly, he shifts into, I'm going to be FDR. And that means I'm going to swivel to the radical left, and I'm going to make myself subject to every single thing the radical left wants of me, and I'm just going to keep pandering to the radical left. The problem is there aren't that many radical leftists. And so what has actually happened is that the reason he's doing poorly in the polls is not just because his base is unenthused about him. It's because independents do not like him. Moderates do not like him. I've been saying this for weeks at this point. Joe Biden is not the moderate in this race. Donald Trump is the moderate in this race.
Well, that's
if you look at him positionally on every single issue, Donald Trump has now taken the center of the political spectrum. That includes issues where we all disagree with him, right? On abortion, for example, he might argue for, say, a 16-week federal abortion ban, which is way too late for any of us. But for sort of the median American voter, that's a lot closer than Joe Biden, who's saying abortion up to a point of birth by every available poll. About 48% of Americans, according to Gallup, support a 16-week abortion ban. Only 24% of Americans want abortion available all the way up to birth. The rest want more restrictions than that. Right. So that's not Biden's position. That's Trump's position. When you look at the Middle East, the crazies in Dearborn, Michigan, who are dictating to Joe Biden that he needs to be somehow putting pressure on Israel to stop the killing of members of Hamas. That is not where the median American voter is. The median American voter is in one of two places. Either I don't want to hear about it anymore, don't care, which is totally understandable, right, or I like Israel more than Hamas. The number of people in America who like Hamas more than Israel is minuscule. I mean, truly minuscule. Yeah. And those are the people that Joe Biden is catering to in the middle of this entire
In fairness, every one of the people in America who prefers Hamas to Israel is currently blocking the presidential route between the White House and the Capitol. I'm not making this up. All 17 to 18 of them are actually attempting to impede President Biden's approach to the Capitol.
He's such a weakling that he won't actually just say to the cops, okay, move everybody.
Move them.
Right. He'll just leave them there. It'll be 4 hours from now, and we'll be sitting here. Yeah. Look at these morons.
One of the things that we miss, I think, because we pay attention to the news, is most people are so taken with appearances. I talk to Democrats all the time who say, the Democrat Party has gone too far, but they still believe in Joe Biden because he looks like that guy who used to be the moderate. I mean, I've detest the guy. I've always hated him. I think he's corrupt. I think he's mean. I think he's small.
People forget he gave us our dear friend Andrew Breitbart, who we just marked the 12th year since Breitbart's death. Breitbart became a conservative in essence because of Joe Biden.
That's right, because of Clarence Thomas.
And the other thing about Biden, first of all, I just want to say that I feel right at home because the start to this broadcast has been so negative and cynical. It's like, it's great.
Like a warm bath.
Yeah. The other thing about Biden, though, is he's the radical in the race. He also, what I think people are starting to finally realize about him is that he really hates the American people, and that's not just like a slogan. He actually does. This has always been one of the distinctions between Trump and Biden, because Trump has the reputation of attacking people and going after people, but Trump always goes after the media. He goes after celebrities. He goes after politicians. He goes after world leaders. Trump never attacks people. He never attacks just like the American people. But that's exactly what Biden does, and I would look for that. That's one thing to look for in the State of Union address, is when does he start going after the MAGA Republicans? Because that's his favorite phrase now. MAGA Republican means just people who vote for Trump.
Right. That's right.
And that's tens of millions of Americans.
Well, it's another distinction that they don't understand on the left that I always get a kick out of. Anytime a reporter writes something negative about Ben and I, they refer to us as MAGA Republicans
Right.
or alt-right.
Yes,
alt-right.
4 years
I love
ago,
it.
it was
I love
alt-right.
alt-right,
Now it's
yeah.
MAGA Republicans. It's like, you don't understand that no one hates Ben more than the alt-right. and neither of us are MAGA Republicans. Although, listen, Donald Trump's the nominee, and I'm
We both
happy.
voted for him in 2020.
Both
We'll both vote for him again.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the left has blinded itself. But, the truth is that politics has just rotted all of our brains
Yep.
to the point that we can't see distinctions. One of the things I've been amused by all week is that when I talk to people on the left and when I talk to people on the right at the moment, they both tell me this is the most important election of our lifetime. They both tell me our democracy itself is on the line. And so to confront this existential threat, both parties have elevated men who will, either one of them, be the oldest man ever elected to president, both of whom presided over large chunks of the worst failure of our government in the history of the republic, which is the response to COVID-19, both of whom are obviously diminished, although one of them
Way more than the other.
more obviously diminished. It just, and both sides are going, I can't believe you would vote for that other guy. Can't you see how old and corrupt and out of touch? And
Well,
what that shows me is that we are so convinced that our politics are so important that we're willing to overlook sort of the log in our own eye to a large degree, and so both parties are in this position of thinking that the other not only is evil, that's one conversation, but out of their minds for actually elevating the person whom they're elevating.
I think to be fair, one of the things I've been talking about repeatedly on my show is I really do believe that we're watching the end of really of my generation,
Yes.
but of two failed ideas. One is the Great Society, which has been a complete and utter failure, but it has fed money and power into the Democrat Party, which is why they keep amping up the charges of racism against individuals and now the entire nation to deflect from the fact that really this stuff needs to be gotten rid of. And that's Joe Biden. He embodies that failure. And the other is the failure of movement conservatism, the idea that we're somehow going to repeal the Great Society and maybe even dial back the New Deal and bring back a rebirth of freedom. Donald Trump, as you say, is not a conservative. He looks like a conservative. He talks like a conservative. He gestures like a conservative, but the stuff coming out of his mouth isn't conservatism. And I think the reason that nobody can see what's happening is nobody knows what comes next. Nobody's actually talking in the way I think they should be talking, in big theoretical terms about what exactly the new movement, the new conservatism looks like. I've been talking to 25-year-olds and listening to a lot of their podcasts. And, it's frightening. It sounds a little bit like Knowles, it sounds a little bit like this kind of proto-authoritarianism, this idea that this guy Bukele, what a great guy, he suspended constitutional rights and got rid of the gangsters.
He is a good guy, though.
In that country, he did the right thing. But I'm afraid that they like the suspension of rights more than they like the cleaning up of the gangsters. That's what bothers me. It's not the individual situation. It's the idea. What are they cheering? Are they cheering the arrest of?
Well, I think, not to get off on a tangent, but in his case, they're cheering a leader who cares about the safety and security of his people and will do what's necessary to secure that safety and to make their lives better. Because that's, it's like a radical concept in this country, but your leaders are supposed to make your life better. They're supposed to make it, easier for you to live and raise a family. But doing that requires you to do ugly. It's ugly. It requires you to do ugly things sometimes.
I can see the point in the case of Bukele. I just think a lot of people cheering him are cheering the suspension of the Constitution more than what you just said.
Well, so I think that the key proviso I would just add to what you're saying, and obviously I agree with it, is with minimum possible force. Meaning that the idea that you should use the means necessary in order to secure the safety and security of your people, but using the minimum amount of government compulsion you have to do in order to achieve that is a different thing from saying that the government requires vast overarching powers in order to constantly do that thing. And so the idea of, for example, if Bukele was doing what he's doing as an emergency power, I think most people are okay with that, like on the normal person level. I think the question is in the United States, what kind of powers are we talking about delegating to the government, for how long and how broad? When it comes to the movement conservatism point, I would agree with you, except I feel, like the no true Scotsman communist here. I would agree with you, except I don't think movement conservatism has ever been tried. There's never been a candidate in my lifetime running for president of the United States who vowed to actually seriously tackle things like the deficit, vowed to seriously tackle things like the Great Society program. George W. Bush increased spending. He campaigned as a compassionate conservative. In 1996, Bob Dole was not campaigning as a slash and burn government guy. In 1992, George H.W. Bush was not campaigning as a slash and burn government guy. In fact, even Ronald Reagan was not a slash and burn government guy. He talked like it, but he actually was not. He wildly expanded government expenditures under his reign. So, the idea that what comes next might be something that looks like, say, looking south of the border again, something like Javier Milei on the right, that would not be a bad thing. Like Javier Milei coming in and just vastly cutting programs.
Yep.
I'm totally in favor of that. The big question for me tonight, getting back to Joe Biden and away from South America, the big question for me is, of course, whether Joe Biden is capable of remaining conscious or whether he's going to fall asleep the way I do on my Helix sleep mattress. I've had my Helix sleep mattress for multiple years at this point. I love it because it was made just for me. Drew, don't you also have a Helix?
I do indeed, and I stay awake all night, so I actually know how comfortable it is. You guys fall asleep on it, but I don't. I'm there, and it is an incredibly comfortable mattress.
That Helix sleep mattress is keeping me alive because I sleep and keeping Drew alive because if he falls asleep, he dies. If you haven't already checked out the Helix Elite collection, you need to. Helix harnesses years of extensive mattress expertise to offer a truly elevated sleep experience. That Helix Elite collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. If you're nervous about buying a mattress online, well, you don't have to be. Helix has a sleep quiz. It matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. I, of course, took that Helix quiz. I was matched with a firm but breathable mattress. It is fantastic. Plus, Helix has a 10-year warranty. You try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They'll pick it up for you if you don't love it, but you will. It's never happened before, I don't think. Their financing options and flexible payment plans make it so a great night's sleep is never far away. Helix is offering our listeners 20% off all mattress orders plus 2 free pillows. Again, head on over to helixsleep.com/backstage. That's helixsleep.com/backstage. It's their best offer yet. Won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts right now. So, yeah, I mean, the truth is, hovering over all of the political talk is the simple fact that most Americans vote based on who they just like when they get into the voting booth.
And who's taller.
Well, yeah, that too.
And money.
It is amazing to me. I think that the Democrats really thought that everybody would just ignore the fact that Joe Biden is no longer sentient. Everybody knows that's the underlying question of tonight is whether they're going to have to break out the defibrillators. Right? The only question is how serious the health crisis will be. I'm sure there are over-under bets on how long he will pause during the speech to regain it. If somebody, you can end his presidency tonight if you unplug the teleprompter. If you unplug the teleprompter, dude is toast because he will just start me. That's when my rosary is on it.
It's just handing out Werther's originals.
I mean, honestly,
good.
there's only one way I truly think, honestly, that he can save the speech tonight. That's to reach into the podium and get one of these.
Oh, no.
Cerveza cristal. Cerveza cristal.
And may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
We're not going to explain that at all.
No. That's not the way of our show. We make obscure jokes and fine, we'll explain the joke. Okay, for those who haven't seen,
what are you going to explain this?
Because it's a great clip, and so we have to show it. Come on.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So this went viral in 2003 in Chile. We're back south of the border. In Chile, they ran Star Wars: A New Hope on TV, and they did not tell the advertisers that they were not allowed to do this. So the advertisers just did something unique with Cerveza Cristal. And so we bring you this masterpiece.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
Yes. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
I wish I'd known him.
He was the best star pilot in the galaxy. And a cunning warrior. I understand you've become quite a good pilot yourself. And he was a good friend. Which reminds me, I have something here for you. Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough.
Cerveza cristal. Cerveza cristal.
I just say when I watch that, I'm reminded about how bad the writing and acting in Star Wars is.
God bless it, Matt. You're
It really
the worst
is.
Person. You're
It
just the worst.
it doesn't hold up at all.
That's not.
I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just saying
It's not true at all. It's not even
true.
remotely true.
Ben, because you watched it.
No, my kids watch it.
When's the first time you saw Star Wars?
I don't know, 7 maybe.
Exactly. You have a nostalgic attachment to it. If you wait like I did and you watch it first time when you're like 25, you go like, "This is Star Wars? This is what everyone's freaking out about?"
I have to tell you, this is the one opinion of Matt's I agree with 100%.
You do agree.
Of course you do, because you thought the talkies would never last.
By the way, you want to know something funny? Alec Guinness in that movie is 56.
Is he?
Wow.
He's fit. Yeah, he's born in 1914.
Every
yeah.
time I watch him, I think he's such an intelligent actor. He must be thinking, I hope the paycheck for this is very good because I'm making a fool of myself in time.
And they're not
Are
American.
you going to defend the
I
acting
never
in this?
thought I would.
You think
I never thought I'd.
Okay,
want
so
Michael
I'll defend-
Bolton
so
back.
Alec-
Mark? You think Mark Hamill?
Okay, Mark Hamill's indefensible, but I will say that Alec Guinness is great in everything,
In everything.
and
He's great in
he's great in this, and Harrison Ford is iconic. He is. I mean, you want to talk about like the greatest run? Sorry, Alec Guinness was 50. Let's see, he was 63. Anyway,
You don't have to defend Star Wars to these bozos. It's one of the most successful films of all time,
Successful, no question about that.
and it deserves it.
It's terrible. No. It destroyed the movie industry.
It destroyed the movie industry.
Yeah.
In what
That's
way?
an interesting take. Why do you
That's
say
a
that?
stupid take.
Because the IQ of movies before Star Wars was up around 140. After Star Wars, the movie industry is not. The movies are now 90.
What are
points
you
of-
That's
talking
good. That's
about?
I like that take. I'm going to take.
The IQ
Can I take that take?
That's a
It's just
stupid take.
a little copyright. On it.
The IQ of the movie industry started to really wreck itself during Marvel era.
Well,
Okay, then it's late, but it's really during Marvel era.
No, but this created the Marvel era. This created the
You're-
place.
you're-
This is 30 years
77.
before
No.
Marvel era.
77.
But it took a long time for the cancer to reach through the entire body. I mean, now you go back and watch like the worst B movie made in 1948, and the intelligence level is so far above Star Wars, and the depth of feeling and humanity. People now think that they're good guys.
Yes,
and
but
bad
there was a
guys.
decade
Actually
called the
think that.
60s, and the movies sucked. And then there was a decade called the 70s, and most of the movies, except for anything made by Francis Ford Coppola, sucked. Okay? And then you got Star Wars, and it saved the movie industry because literally there wouldn't be a movie industry.
Well, it saved the
Star
movie
Wars.
industry by turning it into a stupid.
That's Amadeus won Best Picture 3 years after.
I'm so glad I brought this up.
Oh my God.
I'm so glad I brought it up, and also, that's a great take. I hadn't.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I used to come, when we were just starting the Daily Wire, I used to come in and you guys would be arguing whether Spider-Man was really dead or not. And I would think like, how old are these guys? These people are over 12.
No, he's talking about like Austin and Mathis would be arguing about it, and he's blaming us.
I know. What the
Because
hell?
from
Like,
his,
you never
because
did
from
that,
his
Spider-Man.
vantage, we all look the same, and by we, I mean anyone under 60.
I used to yell at you about it because you would sit there. I remember you sitting there yelling at people. I thought like, who cares? He's a guy in a costume.
Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was some movie where he died, and you were explaining to somebody that he had to come back in the next film.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I can't believe these. People tell me conversations that I've had with other people, and I can't believe that I've had those conversations with other people. So I just don't believe that.
I'm just not
Make
going to defend Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't.
It requires
Star
no
Wars
defense.
requires no defense.
Except for
now,
Kathleen
I will
Kennedy.
say this.
Except for Kathleen Kennedy.
Well, the real problem with Star Wars now, too, if you waited a long time to watch it, is that it's almost impossible to actually see the original trilogy without
True,
all
also.
of the self-destructive
Lucas
additions
inserts,
that
yeah.
were made later. That I think Lucas did on purpose. I think he had a sort of subconscious need to destroy the original trilogy, so that because he did not direct Empire or Jedi.
Empire
I
is one
think-
of the great movies ever
That's
made.
right. And I think that after he did write and direct the prequels, he needed to go back and make the original trilogy much worse so that people would quit saying, you're ruining Star Wars. So he actually rewrote even your memory of Star Wars to make it as bad as his prequels were.
I mean, my biggest problem with Star Wars was always that this is supposed to be highly advanced technology that can go the speed of light, and they're using essentially swords, like glowing swords, like that. That never made
repel
sense to me.
lasers, my friend.
Well, but even so, it just doesn't make sense with all the other technology that's the weapon you're using is a glowing sword.
That's actually a good point too. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Why is that a good point? That's a terrible point. Anyway, well, we can talk Star Wars all night, but let's talk about the old man who might die tonight. So anyway,
He's
Me or
sitting right
Biden?
here.
Wait a minute.
exactly.
I want to speak to that. I think Biden's going to do a great job tonight. I mean, obviously, I hate the State of the Union. I think every word he's going to say is a lie. But I think the performance will not be what everyone thinks it is. I think we always go into these things thinking that the performance is going to be bad. In fact, during Trump, people thought the same thing. Oh, he's so blustery and bumbling, and he's going to get up there and it's going to be awful. But it's not true. They get up there. It's a very controlled environment. They're reading from the teleprompter. Their side bails them out and claps for them anytime there's any sign of trouble. I think that it's actually a very hard forum to fail in. I think that we on the right correctly observe, of course, that Biden is very old, too old to be president, and diminished but I think that we sort of assume that he's more diminished than he is. And when you actually put him up on that stage in front of a teleprompter and pump a bunch of heroin into him, he's going to do fine. He'll do fine.
Well, so here's where I disagree, and I don't think it's possible for him to do fine. The reason I say that is because I'm going to use the Roger Ailes before all the bad stuff about Roger Ailes came out test. Okay, and the Roger Ailes test was...
Can he twirl?
Yeah,
exactly. Can he twirl? The answer is no, he can't.
He cannot twirl.
No, but the actual test that he used to determine whether somebody was good on TV or not is he would mute the TV. So if he was watching a news program and he wanted to determine if somebody should be an anchor or not, he would watch them and he would mute the TV and see if he was still interested in watching the TV, which is actually quite a good test because TV is a visual medium. Well, the thing about Joe Biden is that if you mute the TV, he looks like absolute death warmed over. He looks awful. He looks so much worse than he did even 4 years ago. It's astonishing. The amount of decline that he has undergone. I'm not even talking about like how often he slurs his words or reaches for a word that he can't find or starts bumbling basic facts like who is the president of Mexico and who is the president of Egypt. I'm talking about just looking at him as a physical specimen of a human being. I know people who are 81 who are in significantly better shape than Joe Biden. Like far, far better shape than Joe Biden. He has undergone a steep decline.
I mean, look at
and
Trump.
So the very possibility, so when you look at him,
shape.
if you don't see Kamala Harris lurking in the background, you're doing it wrong because that dude is not going. I mean,
Trump is in much better shape, but Trump is also diminished.
He's diminished.
He is not 2016 Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's not, but they've done everything they could possibly do to him to destroy him, and he's kind of amazing. He's still making jokes.
Well, he's preserved his life energy by eating cheeseburgers and never exercising. It's amazing.
I know. Peter O'Toole said the only exercise he gets is carrying the coffins of people who exercise.
Also, the delta between 2016 Trump and 2024 Trump is not nearly the delta between.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Like and that's the real question. It's not that, of course, he's diminished, but he was starting from a point where he was a stand-up comedian who like makes funny jokes, and you weren't expecting him to deliver a disquisition on the future of Iraq or something.
Right.
You weren't expecting that if you watched from Joe Biden either, but that's what Joe Biden held himself up to be. Right? Joe Biden always thought of himself as this sort of
smart
senatorial Demosthenes, right? He was going to be out there just speaking pearls of wisdom and speaking fluently and smoothly with the gift of gab and all that. Like Donald Trump has always spoken in short declarative sentences with about a fourth grade vocabulary. That's not a rip on him. It's one of the reasons he's a successful communicator. Because of that, it hides a myriad of sins. It's not as though he's a guy searching for the word myriad, right? Like he's not going to be doing that, right?
That's right, yeah.
The only thing that he's searching for is whether to use dumb or stupid, or great or magnificent, right? Those are the big puzzles. So when he has a brain fart for a moment, it also just fits well within his oeuvre. Right, that's what he does. Like, okay, fine.
No,
so
I agree he's diminished. I do have to say...
He can barely walk. When he does, him walking, I swear, when he walks down the steps here, they're going to be so careful about him walking down the steps and the ramp down here.
That's why I actually, there has not been a State of the Union that mattered in my entire lifetime.
No.
And generally, they're forgotten within...
a week.
Within, really, the next day, no one's talking about. This does have the chance to actually be a State of the Union that will matter politically if there's a moment like that, if he slips and falls, if he has a really bad brain fart type moment. It does have the chance of actually being a significant State of the Union.
I just don't think we'll actually get that. I think that if you set yourself up to think you're about to see Joe Biden fail, that you're probably setting yourself up to fail.
No,
we're seeing some footage here now of the Supreme Court justices entering the House chamber, and you may notice that all of the Democrat senators and female senators and congresswomen are wearing white, and that's to show that they stand with the people who rip babies out of the wombs.
Shouldn't it be red? I'm sorry.
You know,
they don't stay white long in that line of work.
Yeah, props, by the way, here to Samuel Alito, who never shows up for this.
Yes.
So every year, Samuel Alito's like, we're a co-equal branch of government. I'm not doing this stupid nonsense. And then he doesn't show up. And cheers to Samuel Alito, because that is precisely...
I don't see Clarence Thomas there either.
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time Joe Biden spoke on camera for more than 20 minutes live?
When he gave that rousing
fascist Independence
Day speech.
Oh, that was great. I love that. Hellraiser 2, right?
Yeah, speaking of Star Wars, he literally looked like he was...
I mean, it was Palpatine in the throne
room. It was Palpatine, yeah.
It was pretty wonderful.
You know, to go back to Trump for a minute, though, I have to say the stuff they have done to him, I believe that every indictment against him, though not everyone is untrue, some of them they're all unfair, and they're they're obviously lawfare. They're obviously
Of
political.
course, yeah.
And he is like still like upbeat, and you can see.
Why wouldn't he be? He's winning.
I know, but it's real. Like even if
Yeah.
they put you through that and you were winning, wouldn't it beat you down a little bit? You know, he's having the time of his life.
Okay, so here's my problem with this. I don't know what that means. Him being grumpy is a form of upbeat.
Right.
Like really, what's he? I mean, pugnacious is what you're looking for. Donald Trump does not have a mode where he's in like mourning and self-reflection.
Right.
That mode does not exist in
Yes.
his
That's
brain.
right.
And so if
But he
you attack him being pugnacious is just the norm.
But he doesn't even have a mode where he feels like beaten. It's like I'm sorry, but it's moving. You know, it's kind of like when they say, "Oh, you got to pay $500 million," and he's like, "Oh, corrupt guy, I'm going to take him down." I'm kind of thinking like, "You go get him, buddy." You know, I mean, you
Listen,
can't
I
help
agree with all of that.
Yeah.
Also, I just don't wish to attribute. It's like when people say, "Oh, he did an amazing job fighting cancer," and it's like, what else was he going to do? Just
You're right.
surrender? I mean, like, what are his choices here? I mean, like, he's running for president.
Once they don't even catch him in a candid moment, like staring at his shoes, thinking, you know, like I could go to
He's
prison.
he's a high energy dude. And the fact that he's a high energy dude is the reason why he is such a contrast with Biden. Because by all rights, he should be running 10 points behind Biden, regardless of what Biden is doing as president, given all the things that he's been hit with.
Yep.
And given the fact that, you know, he lost the last election and now he's running again against the same guy.
Yeah.
Like,
And yet,
and yet there he is. I mean, he's ahead in virtually all the swing states.
And the New York Times is saying things like, well, one conviction and he'll be over it. One
No.
conviction, he'll be elected in a landslide.
one conviction, he'll be president of the world.
Yeah, this is wishful thinking. It's like every single time, it's Lucy in the football.
Yeah.
Like every single, we've got him this time. Oh, how did he escape? How did it happen this time? It's
I will say he's his party's nominee, which he wasn't the last time we were all together in one room. He's not officially the party nominee, but he's the last man standing, and almost certainly, acts of God notwithstanding, he's the nominee for his party. And the truth is, he has been since the raid on Mar-a-Lago.
Yep.
Before the raid on Mar-a-Lago, there was the idea that there might be a primary. After the raid on Mar-a-Lago, it pretty quickly became evident that to the Republican electorate, this was an incumbent president. In other words, the primary itself was perfunctory, just like Joe Biden's primary was perfunctory. I think that is why some of the criticisms, for example, of, say, Ron DeSantis were, and how he ran a terrible campaign, I agreed with our buddy Kurt Schlichter, like, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It wouldn't matter if he had run a great campaign. I
agree.
Well, I agree.
It was Donald
It wouldn't
Trump's.
have mattered, but I also think he ran a terrible campaign.
I mean, again, both of those things could be true, but I think that basically there were two factors that cut against him. One was the feeling of defensive protection that the Republican base took toward Trump the minute he got hit with the indictment.
Yep.
And the other was Joe Biden collapsing, absolutely collapsing like a dying star in the polling numbers, because the entire basis for a competitor to Trump was he can't win, I can win. That's the reason you run
Let's
against
say
him.
collapsing star. I feel like dying star gives me visions of Kamala ascending, and I don't really want to.
Oh my gosh.
But there just is no correct way to go after Trump if you're in a primary. That's what what do you do? Because you can not respond to him. That's what DeSantis did at first. Everyone's like, well, you got to go after him. And you go after him, you alienate his supporters. It's a no-win proposition.
The
His
rules
basic
don't apply
argument-
to him.
His
They don't
basic
apply to him.
argument also was, I'll be Trump but better, which is just not a very good sales.
Well, I mean, it would be a good sales pitch if Trump were running at 35%, but Trump wasn't running at 35%. Trump was running dead even with Biden at the time. And so that's
I think that Joe Biden is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Republicans that we didn't take.
Oh, yeah.
There is a tragedy to DeSantis, who is the most successful governor of my lifetime, not being able to clinch the nomination.
I agree.
But he couldn't clinch the nomination.
Right.
Like that is.
I mean, it's funny to think though that like Nikki Haley, I think, would trounce Joe Biden, but I don't want Nikki Haley to be president either. I don't think she'd be a very good president.
Well, I mean, the real question about about what Trump does in term 2 is going to be how serious he is about appointing serious people.
Yep.
Right?
And whether they'll show up.
Well,
Yeah, that's the question. Will they?
I think that when somebody's the president, people show up around him. I do think that. But I think that Trump also has this thing in his head that, you know, if you weren't loyal to Trump from beginning to end, this time he's not going to take in anybody who even showed an ounce of disloyalty. And so there could be a sort of internal battle inside Trump administration too, between the loyalists who are not amazingly good at their job and the people who might be actually really good at their job and transformational and being able to, say, clean out the executive branch, but once said a bad word about Donald Trump or endorse somebody else in a primary or something. Right? That could be a real problem.
I will say this though for Donald Trump. Obviously, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I wish he wasn't the nominee. I hope, like hell, that he wins the general because he is the nominee. He doesn't hold grudges. I actually think that there's this image that Donald Trump holds grudges. Donald Trump holds a grudge right up until the grudge ends. So if you supported DeSantis, if you bashed Trump during the primary, some of Donald Trump's supporters may not forgive you. Donald Trump will stop caring the second that you say something nice about him.
Yeah, well,
That's true.
you're right.
But you have to say the nice thing.
You have to
That's
say
it.
the
If you don't say the nice thing, you're dead forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
No matter what. So
But you say the nice thing, he lets it go instantly.
Well,
that is
Which there's a kind of charm to that.
No, he does have a kind of charm, and the press enhances his charm because they're worse than he is. So that everything, all the kind of overstatements he makes, the hyperbole and all that stuff, don't look like anything compared to the lies of the press.
and not only that, they take those and then they treat them absolutely literally.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's the part where we all start doing it. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, Shane Gillis has a wonderful routine about Donald Trump's speech that he made after Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was killed.
Oh, yes.
It's a wonderful,
It's a
wonderful
great
routine.
Yeah.
When he says, like, when he's talking about the wonders of Trump and how Trump came out, and where Obama, after they killed bin Laden, he came out and he was very somber and he was trying to explain in very measured tones what had happened. Trump came out, he's like, we killed him. He's dead. He died like a dog.
Dirty dog.
Dirty dog. and everybody found that charming. And the media were like, I can't believe he would talk like that. That's just so terrible. And nobody looks at Trump that way anymore. Like, it's all baked into the cake. Here's the other thing. I think that there is a whole group of Americans who are older, who are looking at younger Americans, and they're like, what's happening right now isn't normal. Like, it's weird and it's not normal. And for younger Americans, guess what? This is normal.
Yes.
This has been happening since 2015. It is now 2024. There are people who are going to vote in the next election cycle who are legitimately 9 or 10 years old when Donald Trump became a presidential candidate for the first time.
And a lot of them, I had this guy I interviewed this week, a 24-year-old conservative talker with a small show, and he said, 2020 happens. You watch these riots go on. You watch the press tell you that these riots will cure COVID, but if you go to a Donald Trump rally, that will spread COVID. And the riots are mostly peaceful with the building. He said, you realize these people are not here for me. They hate me,
Yeah, sorry, on the screen, they're just showing that this is the greatest collection of IQ I've ever seen. Mazie Hirono and Bernie Sanders laughing together about how many people they would put in the gulag if they actually had the opportunity.
combined age of 650.
Yeah.
600.
In
Their
fairness,
combined
though,
age is
she wasn't-
significantly higher than their combined IQ.
She wasn't wearing white, which I appreciate in this setting.
That is true. Now, I hate all these people. I truly do. I mean, like, Congress is filled with dullards. The Supreme Court is,
Will there be actual support after this for a presidential age limit? Do we think?
no.
There should be.
There should be 100%.
Like, it's unassailable in my mind that obviously 75
At some point, you stop.
should be the cutoff, if not earlier.
Yeah, that's correct.
I would cut off much earlier.
But this is telling us something, right? It's telling us that the boomer generation is the last generation that was playing.
Well, I think that something you've said before, Drew, and I think this is right, is that, yes, we can yell at the boomer generation and blame them, and they deserve a lot. But I think they think they're holding back something that's catastrophic.
I agree.
I do
They
too.
probably are.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
I mean, you think about even the air, we talk a lot about the DEI in the airline industry.
Right.
And I think you got this generation of, and I've seen people talk about this generation of like boomer pilots who are just keeping us from catastrophe. And once they shuffle off, we're in trouble.
That's what this kid said, by the way. He said, you guys have a lot to answer for. Speaking to me, he said, you guys have a lot to answer for, but you knew what you were doing. You were competent. You knew how to do your jobs. And he said, that's not true anymore.
Yeah, we will hearken back to the good old days when planes didn't crash.
I mean, one of the pieces of reportage that we've done on the DEI stuff is on the surgery
good
industry.
Good piece.
And the fact that DEI has now infused, like the people who are cutting you open. I mean, the insanity that is about to be unleashed among people of the younger generation is totally crazy. The middle there is no middle anymore. The middle has been completely obliterated. The truth is not that there wasn't a conservative movement, Drew. The fact is that there was this everyone hates the blob. And for a reason. The blob is terrible.
Yeah.
The question is always what comes after the blob.
Right.
And so it could be something good, or it could be something even worse than the blob. That is certainly a real possibility. You could get a polarization between the wokies on one hand and people who really do believe that the government should have extraordinary powers at the top level to ensure whatever they want
Right.
from that side.
No,
I mean,
I
it could get way worse from here.
Yes.
As I'm fond of telling Jeremy, it always looks dark just before it goes pitch black. So I'm just gonna pour that on there. But there is something that I think would make us all feel better at this point. Of course,
Oh boy.
you know, the only thing actually.
So if you thought that joke was funny, you should become a Daily Wire Plus subscriber. You'll be able to ask
Even
us,
if you didn't,
yeah, you'll be able to ask us questions in the back half, like what the hell, which would be valid. We'd try to answer that. They say the president is still in the car, so it may be a minute here. I don't know if that means that he's still stuck behind the.
Has Kamala Harris ever looked not awkward?
No,
She's like the Michael Scott of vice presidents.
you know that she had. There's like a 20% chance that she is our next president.
Higher than that.
Higher than that at some point, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say right now that there's maybe a 50% chance, because if you figure that Biden has a 50% shot of being president, then she almost certainly will be president
That's
because
right.
he will die, unfortunately, because you don't want that to happen to anybody. There's Jill, who's
I still
guilty for
refuse to believe
pushing her,
Biden's
the greatest doctor of our time. Right there. There she is. She's quite the doctor. Very doctory. Well, they made it in. They must have run over a few protesters. So that's exciting.
Drew, what were you saying?
I still refuse to believe Biden's going to be the nominee. He'll be the candidate.
Of course, he's going to be the candidate.
Well, I
Stop with this
mean,
nonsense.
at this point, they have no choice.
Oh, they have one choice, but only if Biden were to die, or
path.
the only path would be. That isn't a path. The only path would be if they somehow convince Biden to step aside. If he dies, Kamala Harris is the nominee, and Donald Trump is the next president. But if they could get Biden to step aside and get Kamala, or get
Man, look at this cabinet.
It's awful. It's
Blinken.
Blinken to me is the
Who has
one
set the world on
sinister-
fire. Janet Yellen,
Yeah.
who's created 40-year inflation. Lloyd Austin, fresh from the hospital, who has done nothing but cripple the American military with woke garbage.
Yeah.
Well, what a cavalcade of comedy geniuses we have over here. Merrick Garland, the most corrupt AG of the modern era.
I think, though, can I just say,
But Mitch McConnell.
Kamala Harris being the first woman to be president of the United States would be pretty funny stuff. That would be some pretty funny stuff.
And they get there by default. She's not elected. She just
Yes.
inherits it.
This cabinet is such a bleep show. It's such a bleep show.
a
Like
rogue
one
show.
after the other. My goodness. Until you see them all in a room together, you're like, wow, that's an amazing thing. It's like it's looking like a Seurat painting of stupidity.
Michael
Each
Knowles-
individual dot, and then you pull back, and suddenly it's an entire just picture of Sunday in the Park with George with morons.
Pointillism of evil.
I mean, there's Pete Buttigieg, who went on paternity leave, and he's probably still on paternity leave, and we just don't know it. Deb Haaland, Secretary of the Interior, who, as far as I'm aware, does absolutely nothing.
I actually think that Democrats believe that Pete Buttigieg could be president.
Yeah, they do believe it. They definitely believe it.
Man, they're high on their own supply. They are so high on their own supply. They think that Joe Biden is having trouble with his minority base. Wait until you run Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
See how that works out for you.
And meanwhile, the transportation industry has like fallen apart. I don't know what he really does anyway, but
There's Alejandro Mayorkas. He just walked in with 2 illegal immigrants under his jacket, smuggling them directly into the House of Congress. So that's exciting news for him.
Mayorkas is the closest thing we have to Putin. He's the closest thing we have to a man who speaks with no connection to his heart or mind. The words come out of his mouth, and he actually means nothing that he says. He's the most corrupt individual. It's
How dare you
amazing.
speak about Vladimir Putin that way? He just wants the best for the Russian
He
people.
just wants the best.
Yeah, it's true.
He's a strong man.
He's a strong man, strong leader.
Very brides bears the whole
I
thing.
mean, he's 40 IQ points dumber than Putin, though, I would say. That's the only difference.
Well, that may be, but just as wicked. I mean,
Man, it's so depressing watching these people.
This is
It's so depressing. Madam, I'm becoming like
This
you.
is your
now.
moment.
I'm
This
becoming
is-
like you.
Yeah.
Just my
No, this is your moment. This is
all my energy just drops and just stroke my much shorter beard. Just, I don't know. Not sure I care anymore about life, about anything.
I mean, we're definitely getting people excited to watch this thing.
Yeah, I know.
yeah, exactly.
Are we the uppers or are we the uppers over here?
Well, maybe there's a rerun of the Flintstones on it.
We could go back to the Star Wars conversation. I was enjoying that.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
Star Wars is good.
You were in the
okay,
room with
so I have a
only
question.
person-
Clavin, I do have a question for you. As long as we're going to do this, you're also anti-empire?
I'm anti the entire thing.
You're a terrible person and you have no taste. That's terrible. Okay.
This is my.
You think the Empire Strikes Back is not?
Fine, the Oscars are happening Sunday night.
Wait.
Let's do that.
I want
All right, let's do the Oscars.
But the Empire. I'm just. Do you think that's like high art? Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
First of all, Darth Vader. Like again, when you're 25 years old, you watch it for. Darth Vader's a super corny villain. He's just corny. He's not like he's not
corny because you've seen every movie. Since
he's not
1977.
intimidating. You know.
He literally picks a dude up by his throat and kills him in the first 5 minutes.
A great movie
of the
villain is like Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men. It's like you would actually be terrified to be in the room with that guy. Darth Vader, you're like.
He uses
I
his
find your
mind
lack
to
of faith disturbing.
yes, he uses his mind to choke people.
Well,
like actually crush their larynx, like somebody who actually died of asphyxiation.
Yeah, he has great powers, but I'm saying in the performance and in the writing, I just don't feel. James Earl Jones, highly overrated. I'm just saying things now.
James Earl Jones was a great. I saw him when he started out on stage.
I don't hold Darth Vader against him. I'm
You
just
thought
saying.
this kid is going places.
Yeah, I did. I know. I actually did. I saw him in the Great White Hope. He was fun. He stood next to me at the phone booths when my daughter was born, because his son, I think it was his son, was born, and the two deepest voices in New York were going, "I have a daughter. I have a son."
And there's Lauren Boebert. Fortunately, she doesn't have her boyfriend there this time. So that's exciting news. There's the Secretary of Energy. What's her face? Former Michigan.
What's her face?
What's her face? Former Michigan governor. You'll remember her from the DNC in 2012, waving her arms like a nut job.
Boy, that shot just there before was like this textbook illustration of the fall of the Republican.
Yeah. Man, Jill. Oh, the greatest doctor. So doctor. And then I got to say, the Republicans have run their Congress beautifully, I think. I think that, and the nice thing is if you don't like this speaker, you can wait 2 minutes and you'll get another one. So, as long as we're going to be depressed about everything, how about the fact that like they just booted a speaker for no reason and they appointed a new speaker and he cuts deals that look exactly like the old speaker's deals?
He's the exact same guy.
The exact same. But it's not even the guy. It's the incentive structure. When you have a
that's
one-vote majority, you're done. Yes. You can't do anything. That's all.
Because I think this speaker is more conservative.
On a gut level, no question he's more conservative than Kevin was. But the idea that like Mike is way more conservative than Kevin in terms of governance, that's not the job. People keep mistaking, and this is true for all of American government, people keep mistaking the man for the job, and it's not the same thing. When you keep redefining the job and leave the incentive structures the same as they always were, the same exact thing is going to happen. That's particularly true for Senate Majority Leader.
Yep.
When people say, oh man, we'll get rid of McConnell, and then we'll have somebody who's really go get him. First of all, can I explain to you that Mitch McConnell achieved more conservative victories during his tenure than any Republican legislator of my lifetime? You have a Republican majority on the Supreme Court because of Mitch McConnell. That is why.
TV does not support institutional men. It supports individuals. It's,
here comes the president.
Oh
my God. The door creaked up.
All right.
It's like the fall of the House of Usher.
That's right. The president is entering the House chamber, and we're going to take you live to the State of the Union, and we'll be back to let you know just how bad it was as soon as the president's speech concludes.
Does he know where he is?
see you, Mr. President. This is about you. This is about the soul of the nation.
This guy has complete integrity. Come back. All right. Thank you for everything. We got to get a good Give him helmet, when you look out and see all this white, you know we're wearing it for you. Thank you. I'm your last member. You're my first member. All right. You're going to do great. Thank you. You're going to be yelling loud. They're going to be yelling too.
Tony. Thank you. David Gill. Good evening. Good evening. If I were smart, I'd go home now. Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, members of Congress, my fellow Americans, in January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt came to this chamber to speak to the nation, and he said, "I address you at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. Hitler was on the march. War was raging in Europe. President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary time. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight, I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now, it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that it needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable. America is a founding member of NATO, the military alliance of democratic nations created after World War II to prevent war and keep the peace. And today, we've made NATO stronger than ever. We welcomed Finland to the alliance last year. And just this morning, Sweden officially joined, and their minister is here tonight. Can they stand up? Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And they know how to fight. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to NATO, the strongest military alliance the world has ever seen. I say this to Congress, we have to stand up to Putin. Send me a bipartisan national security bill. History is literally watching. History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down. In a literal sense, history is watching. History is watching. Just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you were here on that darkest of days. We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a great, gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood. America stood strong and democracy prevailed. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win. As I've done ever since being elected to office, I ask all of you without regard to party to join together and defend democracy. Remember your oath of office to defend against all threats, foreign and domestic. Respect free and fair elections. Restore trust in our institutions. And make clear political violence has absolutely no place in America, zero place. Again, it's not hyperbole to suggest history is watching. We're watching. Your children and grandchildren will read about this day and what we do. History is watching another assault on freedom. Joining us tonight is Latoya Beasley, a social worker from Birmingham, Alabama. 14 months ago, she and her husband welcomed a baby girl thanks to the miracle of IVF. She scheduled treatments to have that second child, but the Alabama Supreme Court shut down IVF treatments across the state, unleashed by a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. She was told her dream would have to wait. What her family had got through should never have happened. Unless Congress acts, it could happen again. So tonight, let's stand up for families like hers. To my friends across the aisle, don't keep this waiting any longer. Guarantee the right to AVF. Guarantee it nationwide. Like most Americans, I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. I thank Vice President Harris for being an incredible leader, defending reproductive freedom, and so much more. Thank you. My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Look at the chaos that has resulted. Joining us tonight is Kate Cox, the wife and mother from Dallas. She's become pregnant again and had a fetus of a fatal condition. Her doctor told Kate that her own life and her ability to have children in the future were at risk if she didn't act. Because Texas law banned her ability to act, Kate and her husband had to leave the state to get what she needed. What her family got through should have never happened as well, but it's happening in too many others. There are state laws banning the freedom to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states to get the treatment they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that. Clearly, those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. We won in 2022 and 2020, and we'll win again in 2024. If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again. Folks, America cannot go back. I'm here tonight to show what I believe is the way forward, because I know how far we come. 4 years ago next week, before I came to office, the country was hit by the worst pandemic and the worst economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear, record losses. Remember the spikes in crime and the murder rate, raging virus that took more than 1 million American lives, of loved ones, millions left behind. A mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have. It doesn't make news in 1,000 cities and towns. The American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told. So let's tell the story here. Tell it here and now. America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, investing in all America, in all Americans, to make sure everyone has a fair shot, and we leave no one behind. The pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. That's what America does. That's what America does. Folks, my inherited economy is on the brink. Now our economy is literally the envy of the world. 15 million new jobs in just 3 years, a record, a record. Unemployment at 50-year lows. A record 16 million Americans are starting small businesses, and each one is a literal act of hope. With historic job growth and small business growth for Black and Hispanics and Asian Americans, 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in America and counting. Where is it written we can't be the manufacturing capital of the world? We are, we will. More people have health insurance today More people have health insurance today than ever before. The racial wealth gap is as small as it's been in 20 years. Wages keep going up. Inflation keeps coming down. Inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%, the lowest in the world, and tending lower. The landing is and will be soft. And now, instead of importing foreign products and exporting American jobs, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs. Right here in America, where they belong. And it takes time, but the American people are beginning to feel it. Consumer studies show consumer confidence is soaring. Buy America has been the law of the land since the 1930s. Past administrations, including my predecessor, including some Democrats as well in the past, failed to buy American. Not anymore. On my watch, federal projects that you fund, like helping build American roads, bridges, and highways, will be made with American products and built by American workers. Creating good-paying American jobs. And thanks to our CHIPS and Science Act, the United States is investing more. During the pandemic, a shortage price of everything from cell phones to automobiles. And by the way, we invented those chips right here in America. Well, instead of having to import them, private companies are now investing billions of dollars to build new chip factories here in America, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Many of those jobs paying $100,000 a year and don't require a college degree. In fact, my policies have attracted $650 billion in private sector investment in clean energy, advanced manufacturing, creating tens of thousands of jobs here in America. And thanks to our bipartisan infrastructure law, 46,000 new projects have been announced all across your communities. And by the way, I noticed some of you strongly voted against it, or they're cheering on that money coming in. I like it. I'm with you. I'm with you. And if any of you don't want that money in your district, just let me know. Modernize our roads and bridges, ports and airports, public transit systems. Removing poisonous lead pipes so every child can drink clean water without risk of brain damage. Providing affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where you live, urban, suburban, or rural communities, in red states and blue states. Record investments in tribal communities. Because of my investment in family farms, because I invested in family farms led by my Secretary of Agriculture, who knows more about this than anybody I know, we're better able to stay in the family for those farms and their children and grandchildren won't have to leave home to make a living. It's transformative. The great comeback story is Belvedere, Illinois, home to an auto plant for nearly 60 years. Before I came to office, the plant was on its way to shutting down. Thousands of workers feared for their livelihoods. Hope was fading. Then I was elected to office, and we raised the Belvedere repeatedly with auto companies, knowing unions would make all the difference. The UAW worked like hell to keep the plant open and get these jobs back, and together we succeeded. Instead of auto factories shutting down, auto factories reopening, and new state-of-the-art battery factories being built to power those cars there at the same. The folks of Belvedere, I say, instead of your town being left behind, your community is moving forward again. Because instead of watching auto jobs in the future go overseas, 4,000 union jobs with higher wages are building the future in Belvedere right here in America. Here tonight is UAW President Shawn Fain, a great friend and a great labor leader. Shawn, where are you? Stand up. And Dawn Sims, a third-generation worker, UAW worker at Belvedere. Shawn, I was proud to be the first president to stand on the picket line, and today, Dawn has a good job in her hometown, providing stability for her family and pride and dignity as well. Showing once again, Wall Street didn't build America. They're not bad guys. They didn't build it, though. The middle class built the country, and unions built the middle class. I say to the American people, when America gets knocked down, we get back up. We keep going. That's America. That's you, the American people. It's because of you America's coming back. It's because of you our future is brighter. It's because of you that tonight we can proudly say the state of our union is strong and getting stronger. Tonight, I want to talk about the future of possibilities that we can build together. A future where the days of trickle-down economics are over and the wealthy and the biggest corporations no longer get all the tax breaks. And by the way, I understand corporations. I come from a state that has more corporations invested than every one of your states in the state of the United States combined. And I represented it for 36 years. I'm not anti-corporation, but I grew up in a home where trickle-down economics didn't put much on my dad's kitchen table. That's why I determined to turn things around so middle class does well. When they do well, the poor go way up and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well. And there's more to do to make sure you're feeling the benefits of all we're doing. Americans pay more for prescription drugs than anywhere in the world. It's wrong, and I'm ending it. With a law that I proposed and signed, not one of you Republican buddies voted for it. We finally beat Big Pharma. Instead of paying $400 a month or thereabouts for insulin with diabetes, and it only costs $10 to make, they only get paid $35 a month now and still make a healthy profit. And but what to do next? I want to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for every American who needs it. Everyone. For years, people have talked about it, but finally we got it done and gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices on prescription drugs, just like the VA is able to do for veterans. That's not just saving seniors money, it's saving taxpayers money. We cut the federal deficit by $160 billion. Because Medicare will no longer have to pay those exorbitant prices to Big Pharma. This year, Medicare is negotiating lower prices for some of the costliest drugs on the market to treat everything from heart disease to arthritis. It's now time to go further and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices for 500 different drugs over the next decade. They're making a lot of money, guys. And they'll still be extremely profitable. Will not only save lives, it will save taxpayers another $200 billion. Starting next year, the same law caps total prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare at $2,000 a year, even for expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Now I want to cap prescription drug costs at $2,000 a year for everyone. Folks, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but if you want to get an Air Force One and fly to Toronto, Berlin, Moscow, even Moscow, probably. And bring your prescription with you, and I promise you I'll get it for you for 40% the cost you're paying now. Same company, same drug, same place. Folks, the Affordable Care Act, the old Obamacare, is still a very big deal. Over 100 million of you can no longer be denied health insurance because of pre-existing condition. But my predecessor, and many in this chamber, want to take this prescription drug away by repealing the Affordable Care Act. I'm not going to let that happen. We stopped you 50 times before, and we'll stop you again. In fact, I'm not only protecting it, I'm expanding it. We enacted tax credits of $800 per person per year, reduce health care costs for millions of working families. That tax credit expires next year. I want to make that savings permanent. To state the obvious, women are more than half our population. But research on women's health has always been underfunded. That's why we're launching the first ever White House initiative on women's health research, led by Jill, doing an incredible job as First Lady. We'll pass my plan for $12 billion to transfer women's health research and benefit millions of lives all across America. I know the cost of housing is so important to you. If inflation keeps coming down, mortgage rates will come down as well, and the Fed acknowledges that. But I'm not waiting. I want to provide an annual tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years as mortgage rates come down, to put toward their mortgages when they buy their first home or trade up for a little more space. Just for 2 years. And my administration is also eliminating title insurance on federally backed mortgages. When you refinance your home, you can save $1,000 or more as a consequence. For millions of renters, we're cracking down on big landlords who use antitrust law, who break antitrust laws by price fixing and driving up rents. We've cut red tape so builders can get federally financing, which is already helping build a record 1.7 million new housing units nationwide. Now pass and build and renovate 2 million affordable homes and bring those rents down. To remain the strongest economy in the world, we need to have the best education system in the world. And I, like I suspect all of you, want to give every child, a good start by providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old. You know, I think I pointed out last year, that children coming from broken homes where there's no books, they're not read to, not spoken to very often, start school, kindergarten, or first grade, having heard 1 million fewer words spoken. Well, studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school, go on to earn a 2- and 4-year degree, no matter what their background is. I met a year and a half ago with the leaders of the Business Roundtable. They were mad that they were angry. I think, well, they were discussing why I wanted to spend money on education. I pointed out to them as vice president, I met with over I think it was 182 of those folks. Don't hold me to the exact number. And I asked them what they need most, the CEOs. And you've had the same experience on both sides of the aisle. They say a better educated workforce, right? So I looked at them and I say, I come from Delaware. DuPont used to be the 8th largest corporation in the world. And every new enterprise they bought, they educated the workforce to that enterprise. But none of you do that anymore. Why are you angry with me providing you the opportunity for the best educated workforce in the world? And they all looked at me and said, I think you're right. I want to expand high-quality tutoring and summer learning to see that every child learns to read by 3rd grade. I'm also connecting local businesses and high schools so students get hands-on experience and a path to a good-paying job, whether or not they go to college. And I want to make sure that college is more affordable. Let's continue increasing the Pell Grants to working and middle-class families and increase record investments in HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, including Hispanic institutions. And I was told I couldn't universally just change the way in which we dealt with student loans. I fixed 2 student loan programs that already existed to reduce the burden of student debt for nearly 4 million Americans, including nurses, firefighters, and others in public service. Like Keenan Jones, a public educator from Minnesota, who's here with us tonight. Keenan, where are you? Keenan, thank you. He's educated hundreds of students so they can go to college. Now he's able to help, after debt forgiveness, get his own daughter to college. And folks, look, such relief is good for the economy because folks are now able to buy a home, start a business, start a family. While we're at it, I want to give public school teachers a raise. And by the way, the first couple of years, we cut the deficit. Now, let me speak to the question of fundamental fairness for all Americans. I've been delivering real results in fiscally responsible ways. We've already cut the federal deficit. We've already cut the federal deficit over $1 trillion. I signed the bipartisan deal to cut another $1 trillion in the next decade. It's my goal to cut the federal deficit another $3 trillion by making big corporations and the very wealthy finally beginning to pay their fair share. Look, I'm a capitalist. If you want to make or can make $1 million or millions of bucks, that's great. Just pay your fair share in taxes. A fair tax code is how we invest things to make this country great. Healthcare, education, defense, and so much more. But here's the deal. The last administration enacted a $2 trillion tax cut, overwhelmingly benefit the top 1%. The very wealthy and the biggest corporation, and exploded the federal deficit. They added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. Check the numbers. Folks at home, does anybody really think the tax code is fair? Do you really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax break? I sure don't. I'm going to keep fighting like hell to make it fair. Under my plan, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in federal taxes. Nobody, not one penny. And they haven't yet. In fact, The child tax credit I passed during the pandemic cut taxes for millions of working families and cut child poverty in half. Restore that child tax credit. No child should go hungry in this country. The way to make the tax code fair is to make big corporations and the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Remember in 2020, 55 of the biggest companies in America made $40 billion and paid zero in federal income tax. Zero. Not anymore. Thanks to the law I wrote and we signed, big companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. But that's still less than working people pay in federal taxes. It's time to raise corporate minimum tax to at least 21%. So every big corporation finally begins to pay their fair share. I also want to end tax breaks for big pharma, big oil, private jets, massive executive pay when it's only supposed to be $1 million that can be deducted. They can pay them $20 million if they want, but deduct $1 million. End it now. You know, there are 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what the average federal tax is for those billionaires? No. They're making great sacrifices, 8.2%. That's far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. No billionaire should pay a lower federal tax rate than a teacher, a sanitation worker, or a nurse. I propose a minimum tax for billionaires of 25%, just 25%. You know what that would raise? That would raise $500 billion over the next 10 years. And imagine what that could do for America. Imagine a future with affordable child care. Millions of families can get what they need to go to work to help grow the economy. Imagine a future with paid leave, because no one should have to choose between working and taking care of their sick family member. Imagine the future of home care and elder care, and people living with disabilities so they can stay in their homes and family caregivers can finally get the pay they deserve. Tonight, let's all agree once again to stand up for seniors. Many of my friends on the other side of the aisle want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security or Medicare or raise the retirement age, I will stop you. The working people who built this country pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. We have two ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy. That's the proposal. Oh no, you guys don't want another $2 trillion tax cut? I kind of thought that's what your plan was. Well, that's good to hear. You're not going to cut another $1 billion for the super wealthy. That's good to hear. I'll protect and strengthen Social Security and make the wealthy pay their fair share. Look, too many corporations raise prices to pad their profits, charging more and more for less and less. That's why we're cracking down on corporations that engage in price gouging and deceptive pricing, from food to health care to housing. In fact, the snack companies think you won't notice if they change the size of the bag and put a hell of a lot fewer, same size bag, put fewer chips in it. No, I'm not joking. It's called shrinkflation. Pass Bobby Casey's bill and stop this. I really mean it. You probably all saw that commercial on Snickers bars. You get charged the same amount, and you got about, 10% fewer Snickers in it. Look, I'm also getting rid of junk fees. Those hidden fees at the end of your bill that are there without your knowledge. My administration announced we're cutting credit card late fees from $32 to $8. Banks and credit card companies are allowed to charge what it costs them to instigate the collection. And that's more a hell of a lot like $8 and 30-some dollars. They don't like it. The credit card companies don't like it. But I'm saving American families $20 billion a year with all the junk fees I'm eliminating. Folks at home, that's why the banks are so mad. It's $20 billion in profit. I'm not stopping there. My administration has proposed rules to make cable, travel, utilities, and online ticket sellers tell you the total price up front so there are no surprises. It matters. It matters. And so does this. In November, my team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now. What are you against? 100 more high-tech drug detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop vehicles smuggling fentanyl into America. That's killing thousands of children. This bill would save lives and bring order to the border. It would also give me and any new president new emergency authority to temporarily shut down the border when the number of migrants at the border is overwhelming. The Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill. The Federal Chamber of Commerce is, yeah. You're saying low. Look at the facts. I know you know how to read. I believe that given the opportunity for a majority in the House and Senate would endorse the bill as well, a majority right now. But unfortunately, politics has derailed this bill so far. I'm told my predecessor called members of Congress in the Senate to demand they block the bill. He feels political win, he viewed it as a political win for me and a political loser for him. It's not about him, it's not about me. I'd be a winner, not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly. Folks, respectfully say, Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now. And if my predecessor is watching, instead of paying politics and pressuring members of Congress to block the bill, join me in telling the Congress to pass it. We can do it together. But that's what he apparently here's what he will not do. I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country. I will not separate families. I will not ban people because of their faith. Unlike my predecessor on my first day in office, I introduced a comprehensive bill to fix our immigration system. Take a look at it. It has all these and more. Secure the border. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. And so much more. But unlike my predecessor, I know who we are as Americans. We're the only nation in the world with a heart and soul that draws from old and new. Home to Native Americans whose ancestors have been here for thousands of years. Home to people of from every place on earth. They came freely. Some came in chains. Some came when famine struck, like my ancestral family in Ireland. Some to flee persecution. To chase dreams that are impossible anywhere but here in America. That's America. And we all come from somewhere, but we're all Americans. Look, folks, we have a simple choice. We can fight about fixing the border, or we can fix it. I'm ready to fix it. Send me the border bill now. A transformational moment in history happened 59 years ago today in Selma, Alabama. Hundreds of foot soldiers for justice marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, to claim their fundamental right to vote. They were beaten, they were bloody, and left for dead. Our late friend and former colleague, John Lewis, was on that march. We miss him. But joining us tonight are other marchers, both in the gallery and on the floor, including Betty Mae Fikes, known as the voice of Selma. The daughter of gospel singers and preachers, she sang songs of prayer and protest on that bloody Sunday to help shake the nation's conscience. 5 months later, the Voting Rights Act passed and was signed into law. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But 59 years later, there are forces taking us back in time. Voter suppression, election subversion, unlimited dark money, extreme gerrymandering. John Lewis is a great friend to many of us here. But if you truly want to honor him and all the heroes who marched with him, then it's time to do more than talk. Pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Right Act. And stop denying another core value of America, our diversity across American life. Banning books, it's wrong. Instead of erasing history, let's make history. I want to protect fundamental rights. Pass the Equality Act. And my message to transgender Americans, I have your back. Pass the PRO Act for workers' rights. Raise the federal minimum wage, because every worker has a right to a decent living more than $7 an hour. We're also making history by confronting the climate crisis, not denying it. I don't think any of you think there's no longer a climate crisis. At least I hope you don't. I'm taking the most significant action ever on climate in the history of the world. I'm cutting our carbon emissions in half by 2030, creating tens of thousands of clean energy jobs like the IBW workers building and installing 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Conserving 30% of America's lands and waters by 2030. And taking action on environmental justice fence-line communities smothered by the legacy of pollution. And patterned after the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, I launched the Climate Corps to put 20,000 young people to work in the forefront of our clean energy future. I'll triple that number in a decade. To state the obvious, all Americans deserve the freedom to be safe. And America is safer today than when I took office. The year before I took office, murder rates went up 30%. 30% they went up. The biggest increase in history. It was then, through my American Rescue Plan, which every American voted against, I might add, we made the largest investment in public safety ever. Last year, the murder rate saw the sharpest decrease in history. Violent crime fell to one of its lowest levels in more than 50 years. But we have more to do. We have to help cities invest in more community police officers, more mental health workers, more community violence intervention. Give communities the tool to crack down on gun crime, retail crime, and carjacking. Keep building trust, as I've been doing by taking executive action on police reform and calling for it to be the law of the land. Directing my cabinet to review the federal classification of marijuana and expunging thousands of convictions for the mere possession, because no one should be jailed for simply using or have it on their record. Take on crimes of domestic violence. I'm ramping up the Federal Enforcement of the Violence Against Women Act that I proudly wrote when I was a senator, so we can finally end the scourge against women in America. There are other kinds of violence I want to stop. With us tonight is Jasmine, whose 9-year-old sister Jackie was murdered with 21 classmates and teachers in elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Very soon after that happened, Jill and I went to Uvalde for a couple of days. We spent hours and hours with each of the families. We heard their message, so everyone in this room, in this chamber, could hear the same message. The constant refrain, and I was there for hours meeting with every family. They said, do something. Do something. Well, I did do something by establishing the first ever Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House, that the Vice President is leading the charge. Thank you for doing it. Meanwhile, my predecessor told the NRA he's proud he did nothing on guns when he was president. Oh. After another shooting in Iowa recently, he said, when asked what to do about it, he said, just get over it. There's his quote, just get over it. I say, stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. I'm proud we beat the NRA when I signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years because of this Congress. We now must beat the NRA again. I'm demanding a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Pass universal background checks. None of this. I taught the Second Amendment for 12 years. None of this violates the Second Amendment or vilifies responsible gun owners. You know, as we manage challenges at home, we're also managing crises abroad, including in the Middle East. I know the last 5 months have been gut-wrenching for so many people, for the Israeli people, for the Palestinian people, and so many here in America. This crisis began on October 7th, for the massacre by a terrorist group called Hamas, as you all know. 1,200 innocent people, women and girls, men and boys, slaughtered after enduring sexual violence. The deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and 250 hostages taken. Here in this chamber tonight are families whose loved ones are still being held by Hamas. I pledge to all the families that we will not rest until we bring every one of your loved ones home. We also we will also work around the clock to bring home Evan and Paul, Americans being unjustly detained by the Russians and others around the world. Israel has the right to go after Hamas. Hamas ended this conflict by releasing hostages, laying down arms, could end it by releasing the hostages, laying down arms, and surrendering those responsible for October 7th. But Israel has Israel has an added burden because Hamas hides and operates among the civilian population like cowards, under hospitals, daycare centers, and all the like. Israel also has a fundamental responsibility, though, to protect innocent civilians in Gaza. This war has taken a greater toll on innocent civilians than all previous wars in Gaza combined. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of whom are not Hamas. Thousands and thousands of innocents, women and children, girls and boys, also orphaned. Nearly 2 million more Palestinians under bombardment or displacement. Homes destroyed, neighborhoods in rubble, cities in ruin. Families without food, water, medicine. It's heartbreaking. I've been working nonstop to establish an immediate ceasefire that would last for 6 weeks to get all the prisoners released, all the hostages released, to get the hostages home and ease the intolerable and humanitarian crisis and build toward an enduring, something more enduring. The United States has been leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire. And they're announcing they're going to have a crossing in northern Gaza. For the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to the situation is a two-state solution over time. And I say this as a lifelong supporter of Israel. My entire career, no one has a stronger record with Israel than I do. I challenge any of you here. I'm the only American president of Israel in wartime. But there is no other path that guarantees Israel's security and democracy. There is no other path that guarantees Palestinians can live in peace with peace and dignity. And there's no other path that guarantees peace between Israel and all of its neighbors, including Saudi Arabia, with whom I'm talking. Creating stability in the Middle East also means containing the threat posed by Iran. That's why I built a coalition of more than a dozen countries to defend international shipping and freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. I've ordered strikes to degrade the Houthi capability and defend U.S. forces in the region. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect our people and our military personnel. For years, I've heard many of my Republican and Democratic friends say that China is on the rise and America's falling behind. They've got it backwards. I've been saying it for over 4 years, even when I wasn't president. America's rising. We have the best economy in the world. And since I've come to office, our GDP is up, our trade deficit with China is down to the lowest point in over a decade. And we're standing up against China's unfair economic practices. We're standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. I've revitalized our partnership and alliance in the Pacific. India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, the Pacific Islands. I've made sure that the most advanced American technologies can't be used in China, not allowing to trade them there. Frankly, for all this tough talk on China, it never occurred to my predecessor to do any of that. I want competition with China, not conflict. And we're in a stronger position to win the conflict of the 21st century against China than anyone else, for that matter, than any time as well. Here at home, I've signed over 400 bipartisan bills. But there's more to pass my unity agenda. Strengthen penalties on fentanyl trafficking. You don't want to do that, huh? Pass bipartisan privacy legislation to protect our children online. Harness the promise of AI to protect us from peril. Ban AI voice impersonations and more. And keep our truly sacred obligation to train and equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. That's why the song Support and Help of Dennis and the VA, I signed the PACT Act. One of the most significant laws ever, helping millions of veterans exposed to toxins who now are battling more than 100 different cancers. Many of them don't come home, but we owe them and their families support. We owe it to ourselves to keep supporting our new health research agency called ARPA-H. And remind us that we can do big things, like end cancer as we know it, and we will. Let me close with this. Yay. I know you don't want to hear any more, Lindsay, but I got to say a few more things. I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation. Between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy, a future based on core values that have defined America: honesty, decency, dignity, equality, to respect everyone, to give everyone a fair shot, to give hate no safe harbor. Now, other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution, that's not me. I was born amid World War II, when America stood for the freedom of the world. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, among working-class people who built this country. I watched in horror as two of my heroes, like many of you did, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, were assassinated. And their legacies inspired me to pursue a career in service. I left the law firm and became a public defender because my city of Wilmington was the only city in America occupied by the National Guard after Dr. King was assassinated because of the riots. And I became a county councilman almost by accident. I got elected to the United States Senate when I had no intention of running at age 29. Then vice president, or our first black president. now president to the first women vice president. In my career, I've been told I was too young. By the way, they didn't let me on the Senate elevators for votes sometimes. Not a joke. And I've been told I'm too old. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserves to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm optimistic, Nancy. My fellow Americans, the issue facing our nation isn't how old we are, it's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas that only take us back. You lead America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. Tonight you've heard mine. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a future where the middle class finally has a fair shot and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes. I see a future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, that was shit. My goodness.
I think we can go home. That's the commentary.
It was honestly the worst State of the Union address that's maybe ever been given. I think. Especially for the first 30 minutes, angry, slurring, starting with the most hyper-partisan issues he possibly could. The decision the very first thing you talk about is Ukraine was
not the state of our union.
Well, and
right.
he was using it only to get to call his fellow Americans equivalent to Vladimir Putin invading a sovereign country.
Right. Yeah.
That's what that was. I mean, that was his gateway into January 6th because democracy is a threat in Ukraine and democracy is a threat here at home. That was literally the reason that he led with the Ukraine stuff, was that he could call his fellow Americans akin to Vladimir Putin. That's what that was. I mean, wow.
This guy
I need something. I mean,
I'm so glad that didn't work.
Even the music is stopped.
That's terrible, guys.
This guy has always been this guy. He's always been an angry, mean, hateful, corrupt little son of a gun. And it's just like,
that's right.
And this may be the only State of the Union that ever accomplished anything, which might be getting Donald Trump elected. If it accomplishes anything.
Number one, nobody listened to the State of the Union. The only part that anybody heard was the first 10 minutes, which is why he led with all the hyper-partisan stuff, because he figures this is his last chance. And he's figuring that what he can aim for here is energetic, passionate, right? You know what the headlines are going to be, right? Peppy.
Yeah.
He was,
he was
fighting, feisty with the Republicans. And the Republicans, of course, were probably helping him along with that by fighting with him, because that way he can do his, look at me, I'm a feisty fighter. I'm not an old geriatric dotard who feels like he's going to crap his pants any moment. But, you know, the fact is that the State of the Union, just to remind everybody, is provided for under the Constitution of the United States so that the president can from time to time inform the Congress of the latest developments inside the executive branch. That is the goal. Instead, he didn't even get to the usual phrase, you start with the State of the Union is strong or whatever. He didn't even get to that until like 12 minutes into the speech. And the entire opening of the speech was about how his fellow Americans are terrible and evil and corrupt and vicious and insurrectionist and terrible. And they're particularly because of Ukraine. And there's so many problems logically with the speech. I mean, first of all, he starts with there have been a lot of attacks on democracy. And then he leads with Ukraine and January 6th. He saved all the Israel stuff, which is an attack on a democracy, by the way, by a terrorist group. He saves that for the end when he chides the Israelis for not being nice enough to the Palestinians and talks about how did you guys know that we're going to build a pier? I'm excited as an American taxpayer. I'm really excited to build like a pier. Can we put like a Ferris wheel, maybe like a merry-go-round on the pier in the Mediterranean off Gaza. He says we won't be putting American boots on the ground over there, which is weird because I'm not sure what are they going to do, swim? Like,
are they going to build
there's going to be scuba divers? You know, Gazan scuba divers are going to jump out into the water, take the stuff in. Yeah, putting Americans, it seems like, directly into a foreign war zone is probably the smartest idea that you could do. I feel like, how could that go wrong? Probably it'll be amazing.
You know, I can't help but think, and I know this is comparing great things to small, after the Civil War, 700,000 Americans slaughtered by each other, Abraham Lincoln gets up and says, with charity toward all and malice toward none, you know, we're going to rebuild. A couple of hundred doofuses go into the Capitol, and he actually puts this forward as the worst thing since the Civil War and the kind of threat to democracy that Putin invading a country represents. The meanness of it, the smallness of it, and the one. Remember when Trump gave his inaugural and all we heard was "It's dark, it's dark."
That's right.
Now you're going to.
We heard one other thing.
Yeah,
that's some weird shit.
But now it's like he's feisty and energetic when he's just mean.
That's right.
Just a mean man.
And angry. It's the angriest State of the Union that's probably ever been given. And the symbolism, I mean, of course it doesn't matter because nobody's going to remember, but the symbolism of you begin with Ukraine. He hits Ukraine, January 6th, abortion, IVF.
My predecessor.
Yeah, and my predecessor. And then he gets to like the size of chip bags. and then finally, right after chip bags, he gets to the border, which is the thing that's one of the top issues for most Americans.
Where he proceeds to blow the name of the victim that people are wearing the pin for.
Right, because Lincoln.
He called Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be Laken Riley.
Whatever.
It's not even her name. It doesn't matter. And then he starts jabbering about like, and how many thousands have been killed by illegals? So he's just downplaying the crime.
Right.
That's literally what he yelled back at the Congress when MTG, when Marjorie Taylor Greene was pushing him to say the name. He takes out the pin, he mispronounces the name. And then he says, and she was killed by an illegal, pissing off his entire left flank because you're not allowed to say the word illegal if you're on the left. And then he follows that up by saying, and how many thousands have been killed by illegals? The implication, of course, being that everybody is overestimating the amount of crime from illegal immigrants. So that's like 3 screw-ups in 3 sentences right there.
But also, I think, you know, I understand that the State of the Union is forgotten and people don't watch it, but I think people are going to remember that screaming. I think they're going to remember the sound of that voice just scolding everybody and yelling at everybody. And, you know, who the hell is he to do that? What has he accomplished that he should be yelling at us for being unhappy that the price of food has gone up 35% since he took office, and the value of the dollar is lower than it's been since anyone but Carter after this period of time, and he's screaming at us? It's like, go to hell, man.
I totally agree with you, by the way. The screaming is going to be the takeaway, and it's really bad for him.
Yeah.
Because during the 2020 election, one of the things that he had going for him is that Donald Trump was the screamer.
Yes.
That's right.
You remember during that debate that was terrible for Trump. It was the second debate, and Trump came out really aggressive. He came out super hot, and he was like talking over Biden, just kept jumping in, talking over Biden, and finally Biden kind of turned to the camera and went, "Oh, shut up." And everybody, even people who were voting for Trump, like me, were like, well, I mean, Trump was being very loud, and loudness is irritating and annoying. The one who is being loud right now, he's out louding Donald Trump. He's currently running the worst reelect campaign we have ever seen. I mean, this is a truly awful reelect campaign, and it may be because he is bound by the strictures of who he is. And what else? What's his skill set? What's left in the bag? Seriously, what's in the bag of tricks? It can't be his policy. His policies suck. It can't be his charm because he's not charming at all. It certainly can't be his energy level because he's dying. And so what we end up with is the old man raging against the dying of the light, literally.
Yeah.
Like literally just looking out at the crowd and yelling at you. For how long was that speech? It felt like about 4 years. My kids are graduating college right now. And that was a
it actually was a shockingly long speech. There's a lot of talk going in that he might not be able to hold up long enough to give a normally, terribly long
He
State
also,
of the Union
my
address,
favorite
but
part is where he
certainly
said
did.
that he taught constitutional law for 12 years. I like that part. Where he said, I taught the
when did
Second
that
Amendment for 12 years. That
I
never
think
happened.
that I'm not joking. I think he's referring to Barack Obama and his time as a constitutional
Really?
Lecturer.
lecturer.
Yeah.
Legitimately, he's such a fabulist.
Yeah.
I think that he spent 8 years of his life telling the fable of Barack Obama.
Right.
I honestly think that he just lapsed into the wrong fable as his own biography.
Wow.
Well, that was devastating.
All those lists.
During my time as a community organizer on the south side of Chicago.
black man
And
growing
remember-
up in Hawaii.
And remember how they
Doing
counted
coke.
every lie, every hyperbole that Trump used, they counted it as a lie, and they had 3,000 lies and all this.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden is our tale teller in chief, as the New York Times put it. It's okay because he's just telling tales. They're meaningful.
I will say that I personally enjoy the new trend now of shouting at the president
into
during
it.
the State of the Union. I think it's great.
More like British Parliament, right?
Exactly. And also, if we're going to do this, let's drop the pageantry of pretending that we're all on the
Totally
same side.
agree.
We all hate each other. So, fine. If we're going to do it, let's do it.
Just agree
Eggs,
with people. Yeah.
like eggs, tomatoes.
Yeah.
Like really go for it,
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Make it more amusing, like a dunk tank. Like he says the wrong thing,
Yeah.
Mike Johnson just hits the thing, the dunk tank opens. I will say that Mike Johnson, I think, stood up one time the entire speech. And
Yeah.
it was when he said that Hamas should surrender, and that was pretty much it for the entire speech.
Yeah.
Mike Johnson had a really unenviable task tonight, which is he had to keep a straight face. And behind him, you could see there were a lot of skeptical looks from Mike Johnson, who does have a very memeable face.
Yeah.
Right, with the glasses and everything. And so him like giving the kind of side eye to Joe Biden will be an image
I was
from-
sorry he didn't tear up the speech at the end. Like let him come after him.
Make it
for
a
that.
paper airplane, like just do some origami. The Kamala Harris being as absolutely smarmy and irritating as it's possible to be,
Without even opening her mouth.
without even opening her mouth.
Amazing.
I was saying to Drew while we were watching that the noun rictus was coined in ancient times to describe her smile. Like that is a rictus, a frozen rictus upon her face, and it's just all the awfulness of American politics just telescoped into 1 hour and 20-minute segment right there.
And,
Just lie after lie, the tax stuff. He does it every year. I know. We're supposed to be at this point inured to the stupidity
Yes.
of people suggesting the rich don't pay their fair share. I'm never inured to it because I used to be not rich and now I'm rich. And I got to tell you, I pay a shitload of taxes,
Yes.
guys, like a lot of taxes.
And they never
every
say
year.
fair share of what? Fair share of what program?
Well, define fair share.
Yes.
That's all I want. If there is such a thing as a share which is fair, what is the size of that share?
Right. Yeah. And there's no fair share of garbage, There's no fair share of this. The stuff we're paying for, it's not making life better. Is life better than it was 3-4
And
years
it's
ago?
all lies also. He'll say things like, well, the billionaires only pay 8.2% on their money. What do you mean on their money? Do you mean on their income? Because if it's on their income, I promise you, they pay exactly what the federal prevailing income tax rate is.
Right.
If you mean their entire wealth base, yes, it's true, because you also do not pay a tax on the value of your house to the federal government, for example. That would be a wealth tax. We don't have those in this country. They're not legal on the federal level. It's just like the number of lies that he's talking about. Oh my God. He says, my favorite is when he talks about lowering the deficit. I've lowered the deficit more than here. And then he's like, we cannot touch the retirement age. Anyone who touches Social Security will immediately be shot. It's like,
Well, then you're not doing anything about the deficit.
yes.
But also he wants to
Lower inflation.
lower inflation by paying for everybody's
by
mortgage.
printing
for
money.
2 years.
Yeah. The other thing that always really disturbs me is this thing about controlling the price of medicine.
Yes.
Because if you wanted to control the price of medicine, the thing to do would be to not allow them to sell it overseas for lower prices.
Yes.
Not to change what it is
What
here.
we'd actually do is
Because what that
sanction
does-
foreign countries.
Yes,
Sanction.
because what happens when that happens is medicines that you would have had, you don't get. So nobody understands that they're getting less. So it's kind of sinister.
It's like let people die so that we can lie to ourselves that we lowered the price of drugs.
Right.
But the other thing is, you could lower the cost of healthcare in this country markedly if you just let the market do it.
Yes, of course.
Everybody always says, we have a free market healthcare system in this country, and it's the highest prices in the world. We don't have a free market healthcare
That's right.
system in this country. First of all, if you cross that border illegally, you can go to any hospital in this country and get any treatment that we offer and not pay for any of it.
Right.
Secondly, most healthcare expenses are incurred in the last 2 years of life. And most people in the last 2 years of their life are on Medicare,
Right.
which means the majority of the healthcare that you will ever receive in your life is paid for by the federal government.
And when you
that is not a free market system.
And when you look at things like that everybody has, like television sets, they come out, they're incredibly expensive. And then when they've sold them to the people who buy them at those prices, the prices drop. The price of a TV that was literally $10,000 15 years ago is now $600. You know, that's the way capital.
But that doesn't happen in medicine because the government is the biggest customer,
Right.
and the second biggest customer are insurance companies. And so you end up in this situation where there is almost no direct relationship between
Right.
who we think the customer is, which is us, and the provider of the service, which is the drug company or the
It takes
hospital.
more than 1 second to explain. And because it takes more than 1 second to explain, it's easier to just say,
Right.
"Oh, cap the price of pharmaceuticals and now everything will be free."
That's right.
But you know, the litany of lies, I'm with Matt. The litany of lies to me is almost, it's pretty much utterly secondary because we've all watched.
Yes.
I mean, I remember during the Obama years, fact-checking. I was working at Breitbart at the time, and I remember fact-checking, like, at length, all of Obama's speeches, and he would tell dozens of lies like this during the speech. That's not the new thing. The new thing that we're seeing right now is the utter demonization of half of the American public.
That's right.
And it really is a new thing. It's something that...
No, it started under Barack Obama, who called Republicans his enemy.
Right. I mean, that's true. But I, honest to God, think that Joe Biden is going further than Obama did.
Oh, much further.
I mean, like,
Much further.
Obama was at least a little subtle about it.
It was sinister. This
Right.
guy's
Right. But Biden is not. He's like stupid people version of that. He's like he's just saying all the things out loud, and then he ends with something Orwellian like, "My unity agenda. I'm president for all of it." You literally just said half of Americans are insurrectionists who are akin to Russian invaders of Ukraine. Well, I mean, since you are funding the killing of Russian soldiers in Ukraine, I don't know what that means for, you know, those of us who disagree with you domestically. I mean, that comparison doesn't sound so great. Got to be honest.
And if we assume that the election was fairly won, which I've never seen it proven that it wasn't. It's only a few people who were so angry at Donald Trump, who were so so opposed to Donald Trump that they moved over to the other side. Trump got more votes than any other president except Biden. You know, in the last election. So he's actually saying that all those MAGA Republicans are the enemy. He's saying like a huge number of people.
Well, you know, January 6th is an incredibly complicated topic, which makes it very difficult to ever discuss. Obviously, the Capitol compound is an enormous facility. Obviously, there were tens of thousands of people there. People on this side of the building don't know what's going on this side of the building. Obviously, there was a long period of time, so there were people who were there and then left, and people who came and then, so no one's experience of January 6th can really tell you what January 6th was. There were plenty of people who police just let them in the building, and they walked through the building and walked out the other side. And there were people who broke glass and smashed through barricades and punched cops. I mean, many, many things are true about January 6th. And we, just as a people, I don't think this is just as Americans, I think it's as upright monkeys, as human beings, we cannot handle the complexity and nuance of an event like January 6th, which means we can't create a true narrative about it. We can only create these very, very hyperbolic
what that
political
means is that
narratives.
there are a lot of true narratives about it, but there's only one false narrative. And the false narrative
This is where I was going.
Yeah. The false narrative is that America was in dire danger of our democracy being overthrown on
correct.
January 6th. That is a lie.
That is a
There
lie.
is no way to say that that is true. It is not even remotely true. It is not even a smidgen of remotely true. At no point during that riot and I hated the riot. I thought it was awful. I thought it was really a disgrace. At no point during that did I think, oh my God, democracy in the United States is about to end. A military dictatorship is about to be declared with God, Emperor Trump at the head of it, leading his way into the Senate and slaughtering his opponents. Like at no point did I think that was even remotely true.
They took this issue that actually could have played well, the Democrats took, and they turned it into the Reichstag fire. You know, it's like this small thing that it may not be a good thing to set the Reichstag on fire if you're a socialist, but still, that's no right reason to take everybody's rights away and to declare half the country as insurrectionists. It's absolutely
That's exactly right.
I mean, the flip on the language that he is constantly, the Democrats are constantly doing is truly an amazing thing, right? According to this speech, we're the safest we've ever been, which is presumably why Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, just unleashed 750 members of the National Guard to guard the subways so people would stop shoving each other in front of the damn trains, because things are going amazing. He then suggested that his plan on the border was more hawkish than the Republicans' plans on the border, despite the fact that obviously that's wildly untrue. I like when he suggested that freedom is under attack because true freedom is being able to kill babies.
Yes.
That portion of the speech was really solid to me. When he just started ripping on the Supreme Court, which we know, by the way, is apparently that it's funny how that goes from being incredibly valuable and necessary to a danger to democracy back to being incredibly valuable and necessary, depending on who's ripping the Supreme Court at the time.
That's right.
So he's sitting there and he's yelling at the Supreme Court with the Supreme Court sitting right there in front of him.
That's another. That feels pretty unprecedented to me. I mean, except when Biden has done it before, but usually, historically, Democrats they'll make a few references to.
I remember Obama did it, and there was a justice who actually shook his head, and it was like a national scandal.
But I mean, with the abortion issue, they'll make a few references to reproductive freedom or whatever. Reproductive freedom, of course, that ridiculous euphemism. But Biden, I mean, he spent several minutes going after abortion in a really direct way. I mean, this is obviously the most radically pro-abortion president we've ever had. Meanwhile, he's, of course, sending his federal government after pro-life protesters and trying to put them in jail for 11 years. And we've never seen anything like that. I mean, we've never quite seen
very disturbing to watch people stand up and applaud for abortion. I'm sorry. I cannot get that out of my head that this is now something that a vast number of people feel is a human right. And even if you would argue, it's a terrible tragedy, but sometimes it has to happen, I would disagree with you, but at least I would understand.
That's at least an argument.
I was making this point on my show the other day, which is that Donald Trump's campaign is closer to Bill Clinton's 1996 campaign,
no question,
than Joe Biden's campaign. By far. It's not actually particularly close.
Yeah.
Right? Bill Clinton ran on welfare reform, reduction in crime, balancing the budget. He ran on not gay marriage, because nobody's talking gay marriage in 1996. He certainly wasn't trying to trans the kids. He was, and when it came to immigration, he wasn't an open borders president at that time, because it was already after the Reagan's amnesty. Like it's the length to which the Democrats
safe, legal, and rare was the
legal and rare. That was where I was actually going. The fact that the Democratic Party moved in my lifetime from safe, legal, and rare to cheer your abortion, celebrate your abortion, is totally insane. And that's why, again, I think that the thing he needs to do, he is under a fundamental misconception in this election cycle. It's the same misconception every Democrat's been under since 2012. If we get enough members of the base jazzed about voting for us, we'll win. It didn't work in 2016. It did work in 2020 because they changed literally all the rules and then went to every single human in the United States 8 times and picked up the ballot from their house and dumped it in a mailbox.
That's right.
And in 2024, I don't think it's going to win. And I don't think it's going to win specifically because it's wrong. The theory is wrong. He can get all the members of his base out. It is not enough humans. The thing he needs to be doing right now is appealing to moderates and independents. And you can only do that in 2 ways. With Trump, you can do it in terms of personality, right? You can say, he's a crazy person and I'm sane. That was an insane speech, and he looked like a crazy, addled old asshole.
I thought so, too.
And then you can also present a moderate policy agenda, and he doesn't. He presents Bernie Sanders' policy agenda. So he goes 0 for 2 on the 2 things he needs to do to reach out to the median voter. He's pushing the median voter over toward Donald Trump. The only thing Trump has to do is shut up. If Trump shuts up, he'll be president.
That would be amazing.
Trump is. And he's shutting up for 2 reasons. One, they literally don't allow him on any social media platform to express his
And by the way, it's been the greatest favor to him.
Yeah.
If you're on Twitter right now, it'd be way worse for him.
I wonder if he knows that.
Number 2, he is running a form of Joe Biden's 2020 campaign. I mean, Donald Trump is not really out there campaigning. He does the odd rally every now and then, but you're seeing less of Donald Trump so far in this election campaign than probably any president or any candidate for the presidency in the modern era, except for Joe Biden 2020. I mean, he's not out there in a major way, which is good.
Yes.
And nobody,
keep doing that.
I mean, I guess people have pointed this out. He's ahead in the polls, which he never was in the last election.
Right.
You know, we always attack the polls, but he was never ahead in the last election, and now he actually is.
The great, hilarious thing about this election cycle right now, Donald Trump is running the best he has ever run against any candidate, 2016, 2020, any of them. He is currently running ahead of Joe Biden by a point or 2 in the Real Clear Politics polling average. He has led in, I believe, 24 of the last 31 polls. Joe Biden has not had a Real Clear Politics polling average since mid-September. At no point, literally no point, during the 2020 race was Donald Trump polling ahead of Joe Biden. Literally no time. As soon as we got to the point where Biden was the nominee, Biden led wire to wire in that election cycle. In the final result, in the Real Clear Politics polling average, Joe Biden was up by 7.5 points. He ended up winning by 4.5 points.
That's right, yeah.
if Donald Trump is up by 2.5 points right now, or 2 points, he's actually up by 4.
That's right.
And because there are a bunch of people out there, independents, who are telling pollsters, I don't know, I'm not so sure. And then when it comes right down to it, they're going to vote against Biden. They are. He is forcibly pushing moderates away from him.
I was in a major, I can't say who it was for reasons that will become clear, but I was in a major New York media office this week where the head of that office started talking about Trump in such a way that one of the other people said, I should close the door, because he was saying, Trump really was a better president, and he saved this country in a lot of ways from some terrible things. This is a guy I know, leftist down to his knees. Yeah. It's
in every election of my lifetime, the question of who wins the presidential election is determined by who it is that the election is a referendum on.
Yes. Yeah.
And Donald Trump's enormous mistake in 2020 is that he could not subordinate his ego. He couldn't let it be a referendum on the left. It had to be a referendum on himself, because he wanted to be at the center, because that's, for better and for worse, that's Donald Trump. Right now, if you are the president, you sort of are de facto who it is a referendum on, unless you change that narrative.
Right.
What Biden was trying to do with the beginning of his speech tonight was make the election a referendum on Donald Trump. But I think he did it in such a tone-deaf and angry way.
Yeah, because he blamed the people.
Because he blamed the people. That's a great point. That it kept, right now, today, this election is still a referendum on Joe Biden. He didn't do anything to change that today.
And because even when Trump makes this election about himself, he's making it about them because they're after him. And they're legitimately after him in such a way. I mean, this is a guy who's talking about unity while he gave instructions to his Justice Department to indict his major competitor. The New York Times actually had an op-ed by this guy, Edsel, who's one of their big left-wing columnists, saying, we can't win unless we convict him.
Unbelievable. So we're going to take a few questions from our Daily Wire Plus subscribers. If you want to get your question in, head over to dailywireplus.com, be a member, submit a question, and we'll see what we can do about it. This first one is for everyone, and the question is thus. When would you guys say was the last time we had an election that was truly about voting for the guy that you like rather than voting against the guy that you don't like? To me, that was 2008 between McCain and Obama.
Boy.
I do think
04.
I think 2016 for a lot
That's
of
what
people.
I was going to say.
I think 2016 for a lot of people, they
voted for Trump.
They voted for Trump.
Yeah.
I feel like that was still a referendum on, maybe for some people. I mean, I think for the majority of people who voted for Trump, at least in the independent crowd, which shifted 2-1 for him, was voting against Hillary.
Because she was the least popular.
Yeah, I mean, people
hated
her.
But I think it is fair to say 2008, the election of Barack Obama was an aspirational moment for the country in 2008. Obviously, I didn't vote for Obama. I understood what he was, but we're deeply initiated in politics. I think for the average person in the country, they thought, elect a black man? What a wonderful thing for us to do as a nation. He speaks about unity, and he speaks eloquently about unity, and he speaks with a kind of authority about unity because he's from the group that ostensibly needs to be unified, that's not been part of the culture, in the way that was perceived. The problem is that, everybody says this is the most important of our election of our lifetime. Starting to sound like Joe Biden. Everyone always says that every election is the most important election of our lifetime. And every election is very important and consequential. The most important election of our lifetime was 2012.
Yep.
It is not this election. It was 2012. Because 2008 was an aspirational vote for Barack Obama. But by 2012, Obama had made a cynical political calculation to divide the country on race to secure re-election because Mitt Romney was popular and was an actual threat to him. I never liked Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was popular and was a threat to Barack Obama. And he made that cynical calculation. He made it right out in the open. And we had one opportunity to reject the fundamental transformation and all of the chaos that's ensued ever since. You can say, well, Mitt Romney wouldn't have been a great president. Mitt Romney would have been a squishy president. And electing Mitt Romney, all that's true, but electing Mitt Romney would have been tacking back toward the traditional relationship between the parties, the traditional relationship between the people and the government, traditional American history.
It wouldn't, right.
Instead, we tacked far away from that.
That's right. It wouldn't have been about Romney being president.
That's correct.
It would have been about rejecting
Obama.
The argument that Obama was making, which
That's
is
right.
that there is a victim-victimizer complex in the United States,
That's
and
correct.
he was at the head of the coalition of the oppressed, rising up against the system.
And when we missed that opportunity, Everything else that's happened has happened as a result
This is right.
of missing that opportunity. And so certainly voting for Obama in 2008 was because people liked the idea of Obama. But voting for Obama in 2012 was a cynical decision by Democrats, and everything has been a reaction since then. That's my take.
Yep.
No, I think this one.
Yep.
Why do candidates make so many lofty promises when they know they can't actually deliver? How is that helpful for them? Do the majority of voters not look at these things realistically?
I actually believe that voters are somewhat smarter than we give them credit for. TV has an investment, whatever you want to call it, the screen has an investment in making us think that what we care about is witty lines at debates and the way people look and the way they present themselves. All those things are actually important. We do live in a showbiz nation. But people do understand that food is too expensive, that policies are not working, that some policies are actually a threat to their freedoms. People understand more. Let me put it this way. More people understand more of that than we give them credit for. And so the promises, they're showbiz. They're part of politics. They've been part of politics, of democratic politics forever. As long as there have been people campaigning, they've made stupid promises. But I think it's partly a cynicism that actually the people don't deserve. People actually have some sense of what's going on, more sense of what's going on than we ever give them credit for. It's just because they have nothing else. They don't have actual policies that work.
And I would just say that there's a complete information overload. Yeah. Obama really introduced this into our politics. It hadn't existed before that. They always say there were no scandals during his administration. He was scandal-free. Yeah. When the reality is he so overwhelmed us with scandalous behavior that you could never focus on making any one of the scandals last or stick or be meaningful.
Also the press.
The press was completely subservient to him. But this sort of shotgun effect has been our national reality ever since Barack Obama. Politics comes at us so fast and so constantly now. No one will ever remember any of the promises that
and I don't think we can blame Obama for the information overload. That is the story of our time.
but he steered into it.
The minute that we, and this is just a historic argument, the minute that we expanded the inherent power of the federal government, this was the wage. Because as soon as when the power was small, you couldn't promise things that were completely undeliverable. If you promised that you were going to put a chicken in every pot in the United States, everybody's going to be like, how? You don't have that kind of power. That's not a thing you can do. It'd be like me arguing that for my income, I'm going to give each person in the United States $1 million. Like that's not possible. And everyone would know that's not possible. The minute that the government expanded its powers, what it did is two things. It made an empty promise to the American people that it could use those powers for exorbitant purposes. And two, it did everything way more incompetently. And that combination means that you get a spiral of promises. Because what happens is that people look at the size of the government, they're like, why can't the government fix this problem in front of me? We spend $7 trillion a year. Why can't we fix this problem? A problem that the founders never would have thought the federal government should be in the first place. It turns out the federal government can't fix that problem because the federal government is crap at everything. So instead, the federal government, but if you're a congressperson, you can't make the argument we're crap at everything because if you're crap at it, we'll replace you. So instead what you do is you say, I will fix it. You put me in charge of the $7 trillion federal government and I'll fix that problem for you. Then you fail and you say, well, the reason that I failed is because I didn't have enough power, guys. Obviously, if I had more power, then I mean, that's Joe Biden on the border, right? He's obviously failing on purpose. But if you just give him more power, then he'll fix all your problems for you. And again, the only check that the American people had on that was the original constitutional structure that limited the inherent power of the government. As soon as it becomes a big grab bag of cash and power, then the person who promises to do the most for you and your friends with it is going to win.
These are questions from our Daily Wire Plus subscribers. They make it possible for us to bring you the show, so we try to give them horrible answers to these questions. What is your opinion on starting a boycott on CVS and Walgreens over the abortion pill? Matt?
I mean, on an individual basis, if somebody decides they don't want to shop at a store like that for that reason, I think that's perfectly noble. I wouldn't be in favor of announcing, a boycott on CVS and Walgreens, or even one or the other, certainly not both, because it will fail. And the thing we learned with Bud Light is that you can have a successful boycott until you have powerful people on the right who come along a year later and decide to undercut it for ridiculous reasons. But you can have a successful boycott, but you have to be very targeted and you have to be smart. You have to find a good target, a target you have a leverage over, and that you could conceivably, you could remove this from people's lives and it wouldn't be a huge inconvenience to them. The problem on the right for so many years, the reason why we couldn't successfully complete a boycott is because, we're just, it's like every company is woke, every company's doing stuff we don't like, and so we're just kind of firing randomly. And something like Walgreens and CVS, you're just not people.
Where are you going to get your medicine?
Yeah, they need prescriptions, and so we can announce that and say we're not going to go there anymore. But
so it's legal. I mean, and their pharmacies is kind of not quite the same thing as putting Dylan Mulvaney on Bud Light.
Right.
It's just an insult.
It's just not. It's a noble thing. It's moral, but it's not a smart strategy to announce a boycott like that.
I think that's right. Next question. I live in California and all of my friends are liberal, but they hate Joe Biden. Of course, they hate Trump too. How can I show them that while Trump may not be ideal, he's definitely better than Biden?
Oh, I have an answer to that. You absolutely can't. You can't do
That's
that.
right.
You're never going to convince people, left people in California leftists, that Trump is anything but a monster.
Okay, but generally on the left, so here's what I'd encourage. So I agree with this. Your liberal friends break down into two categories. The ones who will sotto voce sort of say, oh man, I would hate to vote for Trump, but I might, right? Those people, you can get those to vote for Trump and they probably will. The people who are like, I hate Biden, but man, Trump is so much worse. He's a jerk. He's the worst person
Trump
in the
is
entire
Hitler.
world. Right, Trump is Hitler. The Trump is Hitler people ain't going to vote for Trump. Just convince them not to vote at all.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the reality. And you don't have to convince them. You just be like, man, you're right. This is what a disheartening election. I wouldn't be surprised if voter turnout's down this year. It turns out that a vote not for Joe Biden is a vote that does not get counted for Joe Biden. You have to switch it over for Trump. It's worth half a vote if he doesn't vote for Biden.
For years.
Just don't. I was going to say don't try to trick them.
No,
by telling them that the election's on a different day.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Well, if you tell them the election's on a different day, then Biden will throw you in prison for
because he
years or
loves
whatever.
democracy and free speech.
Yeah.
For years, many years, I've been telling my left-wing Jewish friends that all the anti-Semitism is on the left. So I thought I would cash in on October 7th by saying, I told you so, will you change your vote now? Not one of them. Not one of them. They all say, yes, this is terrible, but it's not Joe Biden. He's a big supporter of Israel. And I keep saying, he's going to stab Israel in the back. Everything he says, he is actually, he's not the greatest supporter, as he said, but he's been a fairly
To speak
steady.
for the Jews, I will say that, number one, I'm going to separate off my community. The Orthodox community is going to vote 197% for Donald Trump. That's just the reality. We did last election cycle. We did the election cycle before. It'll happen again in 2024. Okay, but with that said, that's actually not my experience. I've had a bunch of people who are liberal to kind of moderate left Jews who are quietly saying to me, like people who I haven't talked to politically, just people I know from my life, who have called me up since October 7th and been like, I cannot vote for this party. This party has lost it. I can't vote for this party.
Well, I believe that's happening.
Yes.
I'm just telling you my experiences. I say these things to people, and it's like hitting a wall. It's like hitting a...
You're also in California and New York.
Well, that's
like
true.
That
is true.
Yeah, it is also the case that if you believe, as people have allowed themselves to believe, that Trump is Hitler, nothing is worse.
Nothing.
Doesn't matter what else happens.
Right.
And that's
which is funny because, I mean, on the other side, you have people who literally are standing with people who like Hitler. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Working out great.
Isn't it illegal to use the State of the Union as a campaign speech? The Hatch Act doesn't apply to the president, but surely this is illegal.
Well, I mean, because the Hatch Act doesn't apply to the president, it's not. But would it be if you were not the president? Yeah, I mean, that was a campaign speech. And he was obviously using the State of the Union as a campaign speech. Again, that's another thing. I think that the Americans who like the State of the Union, who are the ones who are most likely to be affected by the State of the Union, are not going to like this approach to the State of the Union.
Yeah.
If you're like us, you and me, we hate the State of the Union generally, or Matt, you and me, and we're like happy to see eggs thrown at the president and all that. Like, again, no laws to be violated. But when, we're different. The people who are watching the State of the Union because they want to see the pomp and circumstance, like the Oscars of presidential politics, and then they see the president roll on in there with his Harley Davidson jacket on and be like, I hate all yous all. And I'm not sure that's going to rub everybody the right way.
Who do you anticipate Trump will choose for his VP and why?
Himself. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I kind of think I think some of the predictions are probably off because.
Yes.
Yeah. Well. First of all, I don't think Trump wants a VP who he feels will get more attention than him or overshadow. That's why somebody like Vivek, I don't think that's going to happen.
Or people saying Tucker, not a chance.
Yeah, there's no chance. So it would have to be someone who he feels is politically advantageous, but won't overshadow him. And I'm not exactly sure.
Tim Scott.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, well, Tim Scott.
Which I
Also, Trump likes to do this thing where he's like, I will cast this like a movie because he's a producer. So who looks like a vice president in that group? He's like, oh, it's a racially diverse United Colors of Benetton cabinet. And here's Tim Scott, who has kissed the ring and has been as subservient as I've made him be. And he will stand beside me.
I guess Christy Nome, I could see.
Maybe, although the kind of personal life is dicey. I don't think that Trump wants a woman. I actually don't think he wants a woman. Because I think that he's afraid that it will overshadow his campaign. So I think right now that Tim Scott is the obvious kind of front runner right now.
That is my guess as well,
Yeah.
which I find very dispiriting. I know who I think should be chief of staff, though. I think Jim Jordan should be chief of staff because personally, I think the chief of staff is going to be the most important person in the next administration. And he loves Trump. He's been, Trump's pal. He's incredibly smart. He knows how everything works. And I think that he could actually run a good government while Trump is doing whatever the hell Trump is going to be doing.
Yeah. Well, there will be, if Trump is to serve another 4 years as president, there will be at least 5 chiefs of staff. So getting Jim Jordan in.
So yeah, I meant the first 3 months. Yeah.
Definitely could happen. Let's see if we have any more questions from our Daily Wire Plus subscribers. Do you guys think that the VP pick really matters?
Nope.
No, not at all.
Nope, it's stupid.
Makes zero
VP's
difference.
a dumb office. It only exists so when Joe Biden dies, Kamala Harris is president.
Can we get some Dr. Dreidel t-shirts in the
Absolutely.
DW shop?
Oh, come on.
I will say that the Facts, from what I've been told, the Facts sweatshirt that I wear in that amazing rap video, that piece of high Western art, is one of the top selling items we have ever had in our e-commerce department. That it is, in fact, a monster smash hit.
It was a big hit.
I have to say that Dr. Dreidel may be one of my top 5 Daily Wire jokes, I think.
I agree. It's absolutely fabulous. I wish we made it up. We did not.
Yeah, we did not. We stole it.
Who made it up?
I think it was Terrible Memes.
I think you're right.
I think it was Terrible Memes, and it was...
It's spectacular.
Yeah.
It is real and it's spectacular.
Yes.
Can you please articulate why Trump's many character flaws do not disqualify a Christian to vote for him? I could tackle this one.
Can we get a King David reference?
An interesting thing happens in the Bible. Paul kind of expounding on Jesus saying, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's." Paul makes this point that you should obey the governing authorities and basically stay out of revolutionary politics. And I think that was a really pragmatic thing for Paul to say because the early church would have just been stamped out if it had taken any other position. But I also think that there's theological truth to it as well. But something does happen in a republic. There was no republic at the time that Paul was writing. The Roman Republic had been supplanted by the Roman Empire, and the Jews didn't live in a republic. Obviously, they were colonized by Imperial Rome. But in a republic, in a democratic republic, the government is comprised and given its power by the people. And in that sense, what Paul said, or what Christ said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar, it's not that isn't still true. It's just that relationship looks much different. You have a role in the government. And so it's not, I think, a fair New Testament position that you shouldn't be involved in the government when you live in a democratic republic. So to the extent that you do exist in a democratic republic, you have responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is your vote. You don't always, in an electoral system, have the opportunity to vote for a great person. You very rarely have the opportunity to vote for a great person. You don't always have the opportunity to vote for a particularly good person. Nevertheless, you do have a vote, and that vote does come with responsibility, and it is a kind of power to impact the government. And so the choice before you in this election, I could not vote for Donald Trump in the primary, even though Ron DeSantis has already suspended his campaign. I voted for him in the Tennessee primary on Super Tuesday. Why? Because a primary is a party preference election, and I do not prefer Donald Trump to represent me. In a general election, however, it's not about my preference. It's now we're down to a true binary. Who is going to be the leader of the country? To whom will I confer what little piece of power I have in a Republican system to represent me and to represent the country? I don't have an option there for someone who I prefer, who actually has an opportunity where my vote can make a difference and actually help them be elected president. I saw this slightly differently in 2016. I thought there were a lot of unknowns around Trump that could be as bad as anything.
Perfectly fair thing.
I made a decision in 2016. 2020 was different because Trump had been president for 4 years, and I had seen some.
What it was.
Certainly, he did bring some of the bad things I was worried about. He brought some good things that I never thought in a million years that he would bring. He didn't bring, and this is the critically important point, he didn't bring the worst things that I feared in 2016 he might bring. And so in 2020, he's a known quantity, and it became clear to me that even as a Christian who objects to many of the behaviors of Donald Trump, when I'm actually looking at the policy distinctions between Donald Trump and his opponent, Joe Biden, I need to use whatever power I have, not to endorse Trump, but to oppose the agenda of.
It's also fair to say that in 2016, both you and I had the luxury of being in a state that absolutely did not matter.
Wouldn't have mattered.
We were in California. If we'd been in Ohio, I probably would have voted for Trump.
I think that's true. We would have made a different calculation.
But Antonin Scalia once said, when he is asked what it is to be a good Christian judge, he says it's to be a good judge.
Yeah.
And I think that the same thing is true of being a good voter, and I think a good Christian voter. That I'm not voting for the best Christian. That's not what I'm voting for. I'm voting for the best president that I think will win.
It's pretty simple. The other guy wants to kill babies,
trans kids,
right, and destroy the border, and he's hunting down pro-lifers and throwing them in prison. That's it. Like, what is there to even think about?
That's right. It's again, your vote doesn't say that Donald Trump is the person who you would prefer to be president out of all of the people. It says that Donald Trump is who you would prefer to be president in a race against Joe Biden.
Who's going to win? Yeah,
one of them will be. Do you guys think that we're realistically on the brink of World War III? And do you think Joe Biden being a weak leader is a main cause of that, Drew?
No,
I don't think we're on the brink of World War III. No, I think that I could see a series of events that would lead to World War III, but you can almost always see that. And I think the situation we're in is directly caused by his weakness and especially the chaotic leaving of Afghanistan. But the brink of World War III is that's a very strong for this situation we're in.
Brink means like right here.
Yeah, that's the brink.
Well, okay, so I think that to be realistic, in order for there to be a World War III, you have to think about which powers would be involved in that World War. Russia does not want to go to nuclear war with the West. That is not a thing that Russia is pursuing or interested in.
Russia does not want to go to conventional war with the West. It would be the end of Russia.
Oh my God, they're getting destroyed by Ukraine, which is a second-rate military being armed with our old weaponry. I mean, there's that. I mean, where else could World War III come from? Iran is not capable of fighting a World War III. If Iran actually launched serious assaults on the United States would end that regime inside of 2 weeks. Like, really. China is capable of theoretically fighting with us, but China also does not want to do that. They see themselves declining, but they don't have the strength to seriously challenge. What they would do is make regional power grabs in places like Taiwan. They don't want to get into like a real shooting war with the United States military.
Well, they're fighting a different kind of Cold War with America right now. An information Cold War, a cybersecurity Cold War, a trade Cold War.
And it does resemble sort of the later stages of the Cold War in the sense that they have a collapsing demographic, a collapsing economy, an expanding military industrial complex, and a containment policy that's a problem. So, that's not going to be a Cold War. That'll be a bunch of regional wars around its borders, if anything. But that said, we have more war in the world now than we have at any time during really my lifetime, because in enough areas of the world you have these wars that are cropping up. Now, obviously, we had the war in Afghanistan, but that was like one place. We had the war in Iraq. That was one place, and we were directly involved. But in terms of like international conflagrations that could break out more broadly, we have two major ones right now. One in the center of Europe, and one obviously in the Middle East. Both of those are Joe Biden's fault. I mean, what's happening in Ukraine? Joe Biden literally said a month before the invasion of Ukraine that if basically Vladimir Putin just used the tip, he'd be fine. Yeah. Right? He was like, if you just take part of Ukraine, then it'll probably be okay. And Putin read that and he goes, okay, well, what about if I go like further than that? I mean, oops. And so there was that. There was the fact that he had already pulled out of Afghanistan and obviously had no stomach for any serious long-term conflict.
Communicated that very
right. It was his belief that he could split Europe based on European dependency on gas. And so he made a miscalculation, but that miscalculation was caused by Joe Biden's appearance of weakness. Yeah. In the Middle East, the real factor there is not Afghanistan, obviously. The real factor is re-engagement with Iran.
That's
The attempt to re-engage with Iran, the attempt to re-center Israeli-Palestinian policy at the center of Middle Eastern policy is the single worst foreign policy mistake of my lifetime. You had a burgeoning peace deal between a wide variety of Sunni states in the Middle East and Israel. All it would have taken for Saudi to sign on to a full normalization day one is like this much. All Biden would have had to do is basically just pat MBS on the back. Normalization would have happened. Hamas is now trapped and Iran is contained. It was like this close. And if Trump had been reelected, there is zero doubt, I mean less than zero doubt, that absolute 100% that would have happened. The first thing that Biden did is he came and he wrecked everything. He came in and he delisted the Houthis, which are Saudi's enemies, as a terrorist organization. He started renegotiating using Robert Malley, an Iranian cutout, as his go-to guy. He started talking about how Israel needed to make concessions to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, both of which are Iranian-funded enterprises at this point. And all of these things simultaneously led Iran to believe that if they push hard enough, they're going to be able to scuttle all peace in the Middle East while killing a bunch of Jews. And to be fair to them, strategically, so far, that's been a success. I mean, strategically, by launching the war and forcing Israel, because what else are they going to do, to then go in and wipe Hamas out, they've obviously put any peace deal on hold because all the domestic populations in places like Saudi Arabia are not going to be super happy. But beyond that, what the next move the Biden administration is making is even more insane. The idea that the United States is going to put its force and weight behind a Palestinian state in the aftermath of the Palestinian government fomenting the worst terror attack in my lifetime or my parents' lifetime is so batshit insane that all it's going to do is lead other terrorist groups in the Middle East to think, okay, I mean, push where there's mush, man, go.
I think we are the closest to a third world war that we have been in my lifetime, with the possible exception of the early days of the Reagan administration. But I don't think that even compares. I think we're the closest we've been to a third world war in my lifetime, and I still don't think we're all that close.
Yep.
Can we get the beer bit one more time?
Oh, if the button works. Thank you for prodding me on that.
I think it's a great bit.
Thank you.
Good. It's classic.
I just live to humor you here, Matt.
We have a clip from Michael Knowles. We were hoping he might be able to make it to a studio across from the Capitol, but we don't even have that clip. They literally said in my ear, we have a clip from Michael Knowles if you want to play it. And then as soon as I started talking to you fine people about that clip, they said, we
don't have a clip.
It actually is just a picture of Michael Knowles, as it turns out. And it's not all that great. I mean, I won't say he looks amazing in this picture. It's not his best look. I've seen him look better.
No, he's not better.
Not much better.
Not much
but
better.
I mean, he's within margin of error, probably.
Has Michael ever been happier than being at the State of the No? He pretended that he didn't want to be there when I saw him this morning.
Pretends he wants to not do things, and he totally wants to do them.
Nobody's
It's
ever
the
been
swamp.
happier.
Where else would he be? You know.
Michael is to going to the State of the Union as you are to directing films.
Aw.
I really don't, but a little I do. Right?
A little, yeah.
Michael at the State of the Union.
I'll say one more thing about the Third World War, which is I do think that we're.
I just like when you start sentences that way.
Yeah.
I do think that we're at a fairly high likelihood of finding ourselves in a war, not a Third World War. I think we're at a very high likelihood right now.
With Biden's announcement today, I think we're like 5 minutes away from the United States having to shoot things at people in Gaza or at Hezbollah. You bring a bunch of ships right off the coast there. All it takes is one rogue Hezbollah agent firing a rocket at an American ship, and suddenly America's active in Lebanon. I mean, like it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life. As somebody who does not want American boots on the ground in the Gaza Strip, I would much prefer that we not put American boots on the ground 2 meters from the Gaza Strip.
Wait a minute. I saw on X that you're an evil Jew who's trying to get Americans killed.
Aside from that,
you mean you can't believe everything?
Obviously, I mean, listen, in my status as a Mossad agent, I have to cover for my actual view.
How are we looking
No
on that
comment.
Michael Knowles clip? I don't think we're going to get it. And
Gents, I wanted to come to you live, but unfortunately the deep state has conspired to shut down our signal here. But we're just right here in the Capitol. I'm with Congressman Ogles. Congressman, you had a better view than I did, and you were there with some of the hecklers and the rowdy crowd. So what'd you think?
Well, I was the first to speak to Joe Biden as he entered the chamber, and I pointed to my pen and said, Lakin Riley, and didn't even ring a bell to him. And when I pointed to my pen, he simply said, "I like your pen." And then later in the speech, when he said her name, he actually pronounced it incorrectly. So the guy's clueless. The lights were not on upstairs. For Joe Biden, he had some energy, but I mean, you could clearly tell that he wasn't with it.
Michael Knowles and Congressman from our great state of Tennessee, Congressman Ogles, who just attended the president's speech. We've done all that we can do, fellas. I think that we've done it. We've done it. We've delivered the people wonderful commentary.
So, guys, what do you think about Return of the Jedi?
What's that?
Return of the Jedi.
We look forward to seeing you on the next Daily Wire Backstage. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Good night.